Listen to this podcast, or I'll gut you.
Welcome back, horror hounds, to Ghostman and Rivera's Horror Show podcast.
I'm Mike Ghostman Pickle.
And I'm James Rivera. So today, as we promised, we have an interview with Adam Marcus, the legendary horror director behind Jason Goes to Hell, one of the best Friday the 13th movies, and Secret Santa, which is a recent holiday horror movie that Mike and I really loved a lot, in addition to Let It Snow and Conspiracy with Val Kilmer. So how you doing today, Adam?
I am fantastic. Very happy to be with you guys.
Thank you, thank you. So how are you handling your quarantine and your lockdown situation right now?
It's been, this sounds so terrible because I know for so many people it's been awful. For me, it's been kind of amazing. I've never had a more like creative, fruitful period of my life. It's very weird. For my company, I just wrote 10 episodes of our new TV series. And we've got 2 films going into production because we've had the time to actually pre-produce and do everything we needed to do financing-wise to be able to like get 2 movies ready to go for 2021. So it's been kind of an amazing time. I know like for most people this just sucks. And it just hasn't sucked.
Strangely for Mike and I, it's actually been kind of the same situation. I feel like we've accomplished more. We've gotten more done. We've pushed and we've advanced things a lot further since being under quarantine. It's kind of given us a chance
Good for you guys.
Like get our stuff together.
It put some things on hold, but it opened avenues in other places. So
yeah. I mean, like the documentary, which is my background right now, Hearts of Darkness, the making of the Final Friday, like that had to be put on hold because we couldn't physically interview people, and I will not do Zoom interviews for a documentary that people have paid to get made. So I'm like, no, we're shooting everything 4K. It looks beautiful. And, and we've got this terrific director out of New York, and he had to go back to New York because we had to shut everything down. So that got put on hold. But even in the meantime, I've had like all these artists come in who want to do animations for the movie. So suddenly we've got all these great animations going on and all this other stuff. So I'm like, great. If we end up with a better product, because everybody had to kind of slow down for a moment, I'll take it. Cool.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. So we wanted to start at the beginning. You grew up in Westport, Connecticut, am I correct?
I did.
And how was that experience?
It was fantastic. Look, I was born in Manhattan. Okay. My parents split up when I was very young. I lived in Westport with my mom, for school and all that stuff, and then would go back and forth between her and my dad. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. I got this, wonderful public school education in Connecticut, and but still was able to like run around the late 70s and early 80s New York City Times Square area, which was like nothing but porn theaters and horror movies and a lot of junkies. And so I had this very colorful weekend life, and then I would go to this bucolic, kind of beautiful sort of, everything was amazing sort of growing up in Connecticut. And Westport was a really special town in that it was an artist community. I don't know if you guys remember like the old I Love Lucy show. When they moved to Connecticut, they moved to Westport. That's the town. When in Bewitched, Samantha and Darren lived in Westport. The book, The Stepford Wives, sadly was written about, yeah, you guessed it, Westport. And in fact, some of the movie was shot there. The original film, not the Nicole Kidman
remake.
Train wreck. No, none of that.
No. Okay.
So here's the thing. In that town, like Paul Newman lived down the street from us.
Really?
Oh yeah. I mean, I would do play readings with people like Keir DeLay and Shirley Knight and Frank Gorshin, the original Riddler from the Batman TV series. And like, I worked with these incredible artists, but it was never seen as a big deal. I was Meatloaf's rock gardener. I'm not kidding. Yeah. I won New Year's Eve. I played Trivial Pursuit with Meatloaf and Ginger Baker, the infamous rock drummer. Yes.
From Cream with Eric Clapton. Wow, that's pretty incredible.
And I'm like 16 when that's going on. So my life was like this surreal sort of like insane kind of thing where it was very sort of Leave It to Beaver, yet the Cleavers were, Martha Stewart and Neil Simon. So it was that, you know, it was that kind of growing up. And my best friend growing up was a kid named Noel Cunningham. And his dad was Sean S. Cunningham, who, remember at the time, Sean was more known as, you know, a producer and a guy who directed a porn movie once. Like, that was the big deal. Like, you know, Noel's dad made a porn movie. And Noel, in fact, was Marilyn Chambers' love child in the porn movie. Was her baby. Marilyn Chambers went to my high school. So she grew up in Westport as well. Yes, we even grew porn stars. So no, it was, so, you know, I knew Noel, and Noel's dad made movies. And from the time I was 9 years old, after seeing the first Star Wars, I was like, that's what I want to do with the rest of my life. Like, I want to make movies. That's it. That's what I want to do. So yeah, please.
It seems like you were kind of destined to be in the arts. You grew up around all these incredible people. Do you ever reflect back on it and think like, wow, I had the type of experience that's like 1 in a million?
Yes, absolutely. But again, my whole family was in the arts. So my Uncle Joe wrote and directed Don't Go in the House, the classic early 80s, you know.
Wait, Don't Go in the House? I actually just watched that for the first time, actually a couple months ago. It's the flamethrower, right?
Yeah, Joe Ellison. Yep.
Oh wow, I wasn't aware. That's your uncle? Oh yeah, that's a good movie.
And then my other uncle, Ned Eisenberg, who is that guy. The two of you, if you saw him, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I know that guy. He's been in like every third Law and Order episode. He was Eddie in The Burning.
The Burning?
Remember The Burning?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite slasher. We actually had a podcast talking about that a few weeks ago. That's
one of my
favorite slasher movies.
My uncle's Eddie, the guy who gets killed on the raft with him and Fisher Stevens get killed together on the raft. Going back, Eddie's the guy who tries to like, yes, he's the one who gets the shears in his throat. That's Ned Eisenberg. That's my uncle.
With the awesome Tom Savini effect.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah. And I knew Tom from the time I was 11 because I met him when Sean was doing Friday the 13th, the original film. So I was always with the Cunninghams. I was always over at their house, and you know, Noel and I were best friends, and he loved movies as much as I did. So that was our playground. Like, I remember writing our first script together when we were 12 on the first computer we had ever seen, which was, you know, Sean Cunningham's like old, you know, when the giant floppy disks had to be put in and all that stuff. And it took like 8 years for the thing to boot up. And so that was my playground, was the Cunningham offices. And by the time I was 13, I was apprentice editing for Susan Cunningham on the movie Spring Break, which could not be a more inappropriate movie for a 13-year-old to be working on. Because it's literally like wall-to-wall boobs. That's like the movie is just boobs. And I always say that I walked into the editing room a boy and I walked out a man from that experience. So yeah, I got to do that. And then I created the first of 2 theater companies that I created while I was living in Connecticut. And Sean was an incredible help behind that, my first theater company. So he was instrumental in helping me to put that together. But I had a theater company that made a lot of money, which is crazy to say that, like theater making money. And it helped to put me through college at NYU, at NYU Film School. That's how I ended up making movies, was from my theater.
Okay.
So when you graduated NYU Film School, you were offered a writing gig on season 2 of Twin Peaks.
I was.
But you were also offered this internship with Sean Cunningham, which wasn't even a guaranteed thing. So can you tell us the thought process that went into deciding to go with Sean instead of doing the Twin Peaks?
I was 20 when those offers came in, and I was about as stupid as any 20-year-old could be. That's really the short answer. But here's the thing. Sean's agreement with me was come to LA, quote unquote, be my bitch for a year, and I'll give you your shot. I'll let you get behind the camera.
Okay.
And so for me, that was the quickest route to actually shooting a movie. And remember, back then, TV, look, Twin Peaks was the shit. Like, I love that show. Like, I still fucking adore that show. By the way, I'm okay to swear, right?
Yeah. This is a horror podcast.
I'm just making sure.
My favorite television series. I love David Lynch.
It's amazing, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Back then, TV wasn't what TV is now.
Okay.
And it wasn't respected the same way. It wasn't treated like this great golden age of television we're living through right now. TV was seen as like, I don't want to do TV, which of course is an imbecile's version of like, I should have done television immediately because you make way more money doing TV than movies. That's just the honest truth of it.
Okay.
It's a career where you never stop working, where movies, you know, a director's lucky to make a movie once every 3 years. Like, you're really lucky if you can do that. Most directors, it's once every 5 years because it's a lot of work. And the financing mechanism is so tough to put around you that it's a longer uphill slog. That being said, I wanted to make movies. So the other thing is, Sean was the devil I knew.
Okay.
So I knew who Sean was, and I knew that, you know, while he was an incredibly important figure in my life, and he was in many ways a mentor and sort of a cinematic father, he was also a prick. But I knew that. Like, I knew the kind of prick he was. So I'm like, all right, he's a jerk, but I've swam in those waters for the last decade. I'll be safe there. So, and again, you know, I had lived my whole life in New York and Connecticut, and I'm being asked to move to LA. Guys, I didn't even have a driver's license.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go to a place where nobody walks.
Yeah.
You know, so, and I had paid off all my debt. I left New York with no student debt because I'd been working the whole time I was in school. I had won Best Picture at NYU, but I had $300 to my name. Like, that's it. I had $300, no driver's license, and I'm moving to Los Angeles. So it gave me a place where I knew I had a job, a very terrible paying job, but a job. And I could survive, and I had Noel here.
You might have made the right decision because Twin Peaks, I know it came back, but it got canceled after season 2.
It sure did.
Yeah, and there's no guarantee. Probably wouldn't have been able to do the 2017 iteration. So you might have actually made the right choice.
Look, honestly, I made the right choice simply because I don't regret anything along my path. Like, I'm very happy with the path I chose. That being said, if I was advising a young writer or a young filmmaker right now and they were offered door A has a movie, door B has a television series, it'd be like, no, door B, go to door B, go to door E. That's where I would tell someone now to go. So.
Okay. Your first movie at NYU, the one you won an award for, was So You Like This Girl.
Yeah.
What did you learn from that experience?
Well, here's the thing that's great about NYU in general. And why I wanted to go to NYU from the time I was 11 years old. I knew I will be at NYU, and I got accepted in my first semester of junior year of my junior year in high school to go to NYU. Yeah. Because I stalked them, and my mentor made that happen. So it was my dream school. The reason is because at NYU you actually make movies. There's a lot of film schools. There's a lot of really good film schools. Don't get me wrong. There's a school here in LA, Chapman University, that most people don't know in Orange County. It's, for my money, one of the best film schools on planet Earth. They make great movies. But here's the thing. NYU lets you own your own copyright.
Really?
USC, they own your movie.
I didn't know that.
It's their movie. Okay?
Oh, wow. NYU,
it's your movie. And quite frankly, that's sort of the spirit at NYU too, is that it's this very sort of indie-driven, director-driven, insanely pretentious school. And I was an insanely pretentious young man. So it was kind of the perfect spot for me. I always joke that, like, we had this crew of guys and one girl. There was one girl and 6 guys. That was our team. And it had nothing to do with us not wanting to have more girls. Trust me, we wanted more girls in our group. But we were called, I'm not kidding, we were called the Syndicate, which is about the most pretentious name we could give ourselves. So much so our logo was written in the style of The Godfather. I mean, we were ridiculous. We all wore black all the time. Okay. We were so pretentious that we would walk down the halls of NYU and other people would see us moving in slow motion. That's how pretentious we were.
Like the opening of Reservoir Dogs?
Completely. Totally. Right?
Yeah.
So these like 6 slovenly guys in their black uniforms, and this one incredibly beautiful, smarter than all of us girl. That was the team. And I made, at NYU, I made 21 movies.
Wow.
I mean, that's an insane, and by the way, on film. There was no video. There was no digital. This is on 16 millimeter or 8 millimeter, celluloid. What happened with my last film is I made this movie, So You Like This Girl, which is a romantic comedy by way of sort of David Mamet dialogue. Okay. So it's a lot of swearing. But it's the way kids actually talk in high school rather than this sort of sanitized version. So it was somewhere between David Mamet and John Hughes. And here's the thing, at NYU, like, everybody makes, black and white movies about people sipping, coffee at a cafe and talking about the woman that got away from them. And I was making like a dumb teen romantic comedy that was something that I understood and believed in. And my brother Kip and I collaborated on the script. And my brother Kip, who plays Officer Randy Parker in Jason Goes to Hell, and was my partner for many years, he wrote and produced So You Like This Girl. I'm sorry, Let It Snow, which is my second feature. So Kip and I were partners for a long time. So we crafted this movie. And I got this cast that is it's so unbelievable. When people see my student film, they're like, wait a minute, is that? And is that? Because the two leads of the movie are Tom Lennon, who is Officer Dangle on Reno 911, and Joe Latruglio, who is Andy Samberg's partner on Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, wow.
So I had like amazing actors in this thing that were guys that I grew up with. They were friends. Do you guys remember the comedy troupe, The State?
Oh, yeah.
We were all at NYU together. So The State were, that's Carrie Kenny, the girl in The State, the one girl.
Yeah.
She and I were friends since we were 7 years old. So, so that was my troupe. Like, those are my peeps. And so that's what my movie is filled with. Also, Deborah Kaplan, who wrote and directed Can't Hardly Wait and Josie and the Pussycats, is the girl in my student film. She was my girlfriend at the time, so she ended up being in the movie.
Really?
Yeah. And so that was my, that's my cast. My cast was insane. It was like this great cast of actors. And at NYU, we won. We swept the awards that year, and were nominated for the Student Academy Award, in fact. Mm-hmm. The cast, it's the first time that NYU had ever given an ensemble performance award. Every single member of my cast won an award for the film. Wow. And again, the movie's up against about 300 other films, so it was a packed crowd. So all the professors loved my movie. The dean, however, wouldn't bring the film to Los Angeles because it didn't represent NYU enough. I was like,
it wasn't artsy or pretentious
at all. It wasn't pretentious and artsy, which was hilarious because I was so pretentious and artsy, but my filmmaking wasn't. So I was like, wait a minute, man. And by the way, they're bringing it to Los Angeles where nobody, like, they're looking for commerce. And I'm like, but I made a commercial movie. Why wouldn't you take it? That's why David Lynch and Mark Frost's company had seen the film, because they came to the festival. They saw the movie. That's why I got the offer.
Did you ever meet them by any chance, David Lynch and Mark Frost?
I have met David Lynch. I have not met Mark.
How was that?
He's awesome. I mean, he's awesome. He's awesome. He's everything you want him to be.
All right.
He's that guy. It's sort of like when I met John Waters. John Waters is like, what you see is truly what you get. That's not an act. That's him. So there are David is very genuine guy, and his daughter Jennifer is like one of the best people ever. Jen Lynch is amazing. She's the shit.
Her movies are pretty hardcore.
She's amazing. Yeah. She's amazing. I'm a huge fan. We're actually looking for stuff to work together on. But that's why I had a more limited viewership in the industry for my short film, was because NYU would not let the film represent the school, which is hilarious because only 3 years later they had a poster for Jason Goes to Hell on the walls of 721 Broadway, which is the Tisch School of the Arts, because I was the youngest writer-director in the history of the industry to ever be hired to write and direct a movie for a major studio.
That's awesome.
So
could you tell us a little bit about how the project Johnny Zombie came about, which later on became My Boyfriend's Back, and why you didn't end up directing it?
Absolutely. I love that you guys did your research. It's awesome. These are great questions, and questions that most people never ask me, so I love it.
Cool.
Here's the thing. Yeah, no, it's great. Here's the thing. Johnny Zombie was a script that my best friend in college, Dean Laurie, had written. And he wanted desperately for me to produce and direct the movie. And so I started workshopping the script with him, and we would do script readings in our dorm room at night. And we worked on that thing for, I don't know, about 2.5, 3 years during school. And it was the movie I desperately wanted to make. And the premise of the film, of the script, rather than the movie that got made, is about a very ordinary kid. Just a real kind of middle-of-the-road kid. He's not a nerd. He's not a cool guy. He's what most people in high school are, which is just a guy. Yeah. And for one night, he wants to be extraordinary. Just one night of his life, he wants to be noticed. And so he picks the senior prom as that night, and he's going to ask this girl, who's been one of his best friends his whole growing up, his next-door neighbor, Missy McLeod. And he's going to ask her to the prom. Mm-hmm. And there's never been anything romantic between the two of them, even though he's loved her from afar, but they're friends. Well, on the night that he finally gets the courage to ask her to the prom, he is shot and killed in a convenience store holdup while protecting this girl. He dies in her arms. And as he's dying, he asks her, want to go to the prom? Missy, who's never thought of Johnny this way ever, the guy's dying in her arms. She says, of course, yeah. Mm-hmm. His need to go to the prom is so great. Plus, he's buried on an Indian burial ground, that he rises from the dead so that he can go to the prom.
Wow.
Here's the thing. If he leaves the confines of the cemetery, okay, the spell that's over the cemetery from the Indian burial ground, the confines of the cemetery, if a zombie, there's lots of zombies who live in the cemetery, and they just putter around, okay? If they leave the cemetery in 3 days, they will fall to pieces. Their bodies will just decompose and they'll break down, unless they eat the flesh of the living. The prom is in 5 days. Johnny is the first zombie to leave the confines of the cemetery because he has such a reason to go home. Mm-hmm. So he's got to eat the flesh of the living, which he finds utterly disgusting and wants no part of. What happens is the rest of the zombies start to follow Johnny's lead because they want to go home. And what we were trying to do, what our movie was really about, because it was a horror comedy. And by the way, it was a flat out, like, bloody R-rated movie, okay? But a comedy. These other zombies want to go home. Dean and I, I went to school at NYU in the 80s and early 90s. I had a lot of friends die from AIDS.
Okay.
So the movie was about how people would go home to their families after contracting that disease and were shunned and were treated like they were this unclean thing. There was no compassion for people who were sick with this disease. They were really outcasts. And so we used the zombie analogy much the way George Romero used it in his first 2 zombie films. We use it as an allegory about the times we were living in. And so the zombies didn't want to eat anybody. They didn't want to bite anybody in our movie. They just wanted to go home. But when the town reacts to them in this violent get out way, the zombies react. So that was sort of, we were trying to say something that we felt was really important at the time. The other thing is the movie was also a musical. Kid you not.
Whoa.
So it was this hard R-rated zombie comedy horror musical. And when I brought it to Sean Cunningham, he loathed the script, but he loved the title. Loved the title. And so he wanted to get another writer on it, and I told him I would not give him the movie if he didn't bring Dean Laurie out to LA and let us work on the script together. he did. He acquiesced and brought Dean out, put us up in a hotel, which was great because I was living in my car at the time. So it was great to get out of the car and into a hotel. Mm-hmm. And we rewrote the script for 6 weeks. And Sean ended up falling madly in love with the script, so much so that he hired Dean Laurie as the first company writer Sean had ever hired as a staff writer for Cunningham Films. That's how Dean and I ended up writing Jason Goes to Hell together. So that's the launch of it. Here's the thing. We start the problem in Hollywood, especially at that time, nobody read anything. Mm-hmm. So people would read a 2-page piece of coverage, but they wouldn't read a screenplay. By the way, that still goes on. So my thought was, why don't we read it for them? So because of my background in theater, and Sean Cunningham was also a big theater guy back in the day. He was actually a Broadway stage manager, and he did shows like Wait Until Dark when it was on Broadway. The two of us would put together, we would hire casts of actors to do these readings. And so when we did the Johnny Zombie reading, which, by the way, the Johnny Zombie reading, it had people like George Hearn, who was the Tony Award winner for Sweeney Todd. It had Charlotte Ray, Mrs. Garrett from The Facts of Life, mm-hmm. Also another Sondheim actor. We had all these incredible actors because our casting director was a guy named Barry Moss, who cast every episode of The Cosby Show and was one of the most respected casting directors on Broadway. So we would get these incredible actors who just wanted to work, like they just wanted to do stuff, right? So we did these readings. The guy who played Johnny in our readings, Adam Sandler.
Really?
Oh, wow.
who was Dean and my next door neighbor for 2 years at NYU.
Oh, wow.
Because we all went to NYU at the same time. So Adam Sandler played Johnny. We got offers we got into a bidding war between Disney and New Line. They both wanted the movie because we read it for those executives. Mm-hmm. And I kept begging Sean, please go with New Line. New Line's the right place. New Line will get the movie. They'll make the right movie. Disney backed up a truck of money to Sean's house, and he went, yeah, I'm going to go with Disney. And so suddenly instead of making a scrappy, $2.5-3 million movie, we're making a $9 million movie at Disney. And Sean never met a dollar he wouldn't fuck his mother for. So that's Sean. And so, you know what? Okay, like that was the way it was going to go. Disney was never going to let, a 22-year-old or 21-year-old kid at the time, direct a $9 million movie for the Disney company. So they went, yeah, you're not going to do this. So I turned to Sean. I said, I just made you a buttload of money. You owe me a movie. Give me a movie. And Sean said, you know what, Marcus? You're the world's biggest nudge. I said, yes, give me a movie.
Give me a movie.
And by the way, if I sound like the Penguin when I'm doing a Sean impression, it's because Sean is actually the Penguin. He's actually the villain in the Batman movie. He is the Penguin. Okay?
The Danny DeVito or Burgess Meredith?
Kind of, well, it's more the Burgess Meredith voice, but it's the psychosis of the Danny DeVito Penguin. So it's kind of a mix.
Interesting.
I remember there was one time where Noel, Dean, and I had no money for food. Truly, we were all living together. We lived in an apartment in Venice. We had no money for food. And I said to Sean, you have to give us some money because we have none and you have all of it. And his response to that was, I know, isn't it great? So anyway, he said, look, Paramount is selling the rights for Jason Voorhees to New Line. Mm-hmm. And if you can figure out a way to get that fucking hockey mask out of the movie, I'll let you write and direct the film. And
what do you mean by that? Get the hockey mask out of the movie? Because I've heard you say that in an interview before.
I will tell you.
Okay, to clarify that.
I will. I absolutely will. Because Sean Cunningham keeps trying to rewrite this history, and it's bullshit.
Yeah, he denies it.
I know. He's a fucking liar. Here, by the way, he calls me a liar, which is an amazing thing. Okay, so I'm gonna put it out this way to you. All right. So Sean Cunningham made a movie about a mother killing camp counselors because they had been having sex rather than watching her son.
Mhm.
She is so obsessed with this idea that for 30 years, she keeps doing the same stuff, right? Okay. He did not make a movie about a guy in a hockey mask hacking up teenagers because they killed his mommy. He made a movie about a late middle-aged woman murdering people, which, by the way, is a great idea for a movie, right? You never see it coming. When Mrs. Voorhees said she was the baddie, you were like, holy shit, okay?
Yeah.
Great. Then, at the end of the movie, because Sean Cunningham never met an idea from another filmmaker he didn't want to steal, he steals Brian DePalma's Carrie ending and has Jason jump up from the lake and pull Alice down into Camp Crystal Lake. Great.
Mm-hmm.
And he even gives you a moment in the hospital. You know, did you catch the boy? The boy? Okay.
Yeah.
What boy, ma'am? Great. So when Paramount turned to Sean and said, we want to do Friday the 13th Part 2, he said, great. I've got some ideas about what it should be about. They said, yeah, that's nice. We think it should be about that little boy from the lake. Sean went, what? That's stupid. Why would you do that? Okay. Because there's never been an idea that John Carpenter had that Sean Cunningham didn't want to steal. John Carpenter wanted to make movies about Halloween. He didn't want to make movies about Michael Myers. It's why Halloween 3 is the actual only true John Carpenter sequel to the original film. It's the only one. Because that's what he wanted to do. Sean Cunningham wanted to tell tales of the unluckiest day of the year, Friday the 13th. So he wanted to tell different stories each time. That was his concept. Paramount, which was now in the sequel business because of Star Wars and because of everything else that was getting sequelized, went, and including Halloween, said, no, we think that kid at the end of the movie, the thing you already set up, let's revisit that. And kids at a camp are cheap. We can make that movie for nothing, and we can keep printing money. This is why Sean walked away from the franchise. And his protege, Steve Miner, took over Part 2 and Part 3. Sean had nothing to do with the movies. From Part 1 to Part 9, he did nothing. He only got a check in the mail every time they wanted to make one of these films. That's it, okay? Susan, his wife, cut Part 2 and did a brilliant job, by the way. She's an amazing, God rest her soul, she was an amazing filmmaker and an amazing woman. But Sean Cunningham, when they told him that Jason Voorhees was going to have a sack over his head, Sean said, that's ridiculous. What is it, Elephant Man the serial killer? Then in Part 3, when they put the hockey mask on, he said, wow, I thought the sack was fucking stupid. This is moronic. He hated the hockey mask. He thought it was imbecilic. And by the way, he thinks his audience are a bunch of imbeciles. This is the part about Sean that I was never okay with. The kind of rhetoric, the kind of shit he would say about, these kids who see these movies are morons. And I'd be like, wow, I'm your audience, jackass. Like, I'm one of those kids. Fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
Of course, I couldn't say that at the time. He was my boss. But he was a bully and a jerk. And so when he hired me, he was like, look, I want that hockey mask out of the movie. Here's why.
Okay.
Here's why. Early on in my relationship with Sean as a filmmaker, when I started working for Sean, we were sitting around a table, him, myself, and Dean Laurie. And he asked Dean and I, he said, look, you guys are, you're in the beginning of your careers. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? And we talked about where we saw our careers going.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, Sean, where do you see your career going? He goes, winning an Academy Award. And I went, what? And in my mind, I'm like, you're the Friday the 13th guy. What? Like, no one's ever going to respect you for that. Like, no, it's not.
And the new kids.
Yeah, the new kids and the strangers watching. Oh, it's a treasure trove. But here's the thing. And by the way, Sean's made some good movies. I'm a huge fan of The First House. I think that film's terrific. I think he's done some really cool work. But he's not going to ever win an Academy Award, for God's sakes. The man is in his 80s now. He's not winning an Academy Award. If they had an Academy Award for abusive producer, he would win every year. But here's the thing. I suddenly realized he's the man in the iron mask. Sean Cunningham had that hockey mask adhered to his career and could never escape it. It became his trap. Sean had scripts that I had to develop, that I had to work on, that were Academy Award bait. He had movies that he was pitching to Sean Penn. He had movies that he really wanted to make that were more significant. The problem is, do you guys know he was offered Red Dawn right after Friday the 13th, was offered the script for Red Dawn to direct that movie. So much so, I read for Sean. I did a reading of Red Dawn when I was a little kid, and he was casting me in the film. So I know intimately about the Red Dawn thing. He gave it up. He threw it away because the script for Spring Break came in, and he went, no, people want to see tits. This is better. Well, guess what? Then how do you expect to win an Academy Award, dude? Right?
Yeah.
Well, now he's got this hockey mask, this piece of plastic adhered to his career. Sure, he wanted me to get rid of the hockey mask. He wanted me to change the whole show so that suddenly he could break free from that. So when I brought him the concept for Jason Goes to Hell, there wasn't even a moment where he was like, oh, I don't like this. He loved it. He loved it. Here's the other thing, okay? So let's take Sean's word. Let's say Sean, because Sean has said many times on YouTube, it's out there for people to see, that I'm a fucking liar, right?
Okay.
So now I'm going to give you two scenarios. One scenario is that I walk into Sean's office. I say, give me a movie. He says, you can do the next Friday the 13th. I said, great. And you know what? I'm getting rid of the hockey mask. You got it? You got it, Sean? I'm 22. And I say that to the 55-year-old Sean Cunningham. Fuck you, dude. I don't care that you're the guy who created the franchise. I'm 22 and a genius, and I'm getting rid of the hockey mask. Okay? And Sean goes, okay, Adam, whatever you want. Or I walked into the office, said, I want a movie. He said, you can do the next Friday the 13th. I go, woo-hoo! And he says, but you got to get rid of the fucking hockey mask. And I went, okay. And then I did. So in one scenario, I'm the most powerful 22-year-old to ever walk the earth. And Sean Cunningham is a eunuch. In the other scenario, I was a 22-year-old filmmaker who took my orders from my producer, who told me what to do, and I was a good soldier. And he's a fucking liar. So those are the two choices. I will take either one. If Sean wants to say I'm the most powerful 22-year-old to ever live, and he was a eunuch in front of me, I will totally take that. I will totally go with his story. Okay.
So, when you finally did Jason Goes to Hell, what was the casting process for that like?
Once again, we used Barry Hughes and a wonderful guy named David Giella who came on board the film. And these two guys brought me like the best of the best. Guys, I interviewed Tippi Hedren to play the Diana Kimball role.
The Birds?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. The process was exhaustive. I saw hundreds of people. In fact, Meatloaf came in to play Joey B at one point, which was hilarious since I had been his rock gardener when I was a kid, and now I was in a position to hire the guy, which was amazing. It was extraordinary. And look, you know, I had the two big casting changes. There were two big casting changes that happened in the film. Originally, there was an actor named Jonathan Penner who was supposed to play Stephen Freeman. And by the way, Stephen Freeman was originally supposed to be Tommy
Jarvis.
Yes. Okay. But I should have been listening better when Sean said Paramount is selling the rights to Jason Voorhees to New Line. See, he never said Friday the 13th. He said Jason Voorhees. That was my mistake, because what they did was they sold the rights to everything included in the first screenplay for Friday the 13th to New Line. That's all they had the rights to. So I couldn't use any other characters. I couldn't use any other mythology. I had to start from scratch. Okay? And somehow connect it to the rest of the films. So it's not a reboot by any means. It goes directly after part 7. So Stephen Freeman was originally supposed to be played by a guy named Jonathan Penner. Jonathan Penner is an amazing guy. Him and his wife, Stacey Title, who's also a brilliant director, he wrote and she directed a film called The Last Supper, which is an amazing movie. If you've never seen it, you need to see it. It's so good. Incredible cast. You just won't believe who's in this thing. But Jonathan's also one of the stars of that movie. Jonathan also wrote The Bye-Bye Man, which Stacey directed.
Oh, okay.
I've heard of that movie.
So yeah, Jonathan is kind of an amazing journeyman writer and actor. So Jonathan was supposed to be in the movie, and New Line pushed the film for 3 months. We had a push. And so Jonathan had another gig that he had already signed on to, so he couldn't do both. So Jonathan ended up being in the movie as David, which is Allison Smith's boyfriend in the film, Vicky's boyfriend. And his part got cut out.
Oh.
Okay. Jonathan and I are still really close friends to this day, so it didn't really affect our relationship. Plus, at that time, like, an actor getting footage off a movie never happened if you got cut out, and there were no DVD extras. Mm-hmm. So I actually gave Jonathan all of his footage. So I was like, look, you should at least have your stuff. So he drove to Santa Monica when I was living there and picked it up for me. He was like, no director's ever done this for me. Like, this is kind of amazing. So I was like, yeah, take your footage, man. You should have all of it. So anyway, Jonathan was supposed to play that part. When he couldn't do it, I was introduced to John D. LeMay, who had been in the Friday 13th, the TV series. And since I was making a movie that was really, for my money, the beginnings of a horror universe, that I was trying to create my own sort of mythology about all horror films, I loved that we were kind of traversing that we were going like, I'm going to pull him in from that series. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting. Plus John LeMay is a fantastic actor. He's a doll. Like, you couldn't meet a better guy. He's just a sweetheart. The other person was the Creighton Duke character. So originally, John Rubinstein, the Tony Award-winning actor who played Pippin on Broadway and was the first Broadway show I ever saw when I was 3, he was cast originally as Creighton Duke. And his deal fell apart. There was a whole thing that went down, and suddenly he couldn't do it. And David Giella and Barry Moss came to me and said, hey, have you ever thought of going African-American with the character? And I was like, I had not, but I'd love to. Why not? So I met Tony Todd. I met Yaphet Kotto. And then I met Stephen Williams. And it was like love at first sight. Like, I adore that guy. He's insane. He's one of the most bizarre, freakish, out of his mind guys I've ever known. And I love everything about him. And so that's how I ended up casting Stephen Williams in the movie, who we're close. And I'm still working on my Creighton Duke inspired movie right now that Stephen and I are doing together, actually. So we do have a movie that we're working on that will explore the ideas that the two of us came up with in our time working together on Jason Goes to Hell. So yeah. Okay. But the casting was amazing. Huh?
So your first choice for the Jessica character was Laurie Holden, but then Sean Cunningham insisted on hiring Carrie Keegan, which you ended up having a lot of problems with on set. Do you have any idea why Sean Cunningham insisted on her?
I have an idea, but I don't want to end up in a lawsuit situation with Sean.
Okay.
So I'm gonna drop that there. What I will tell you is this, okay? Laurie Holden and I were close friends when I was casting the movie. Laurie was at UCLA at the time, and she and I were really close. And so I wanted to bring her in for an audition. She came in. She blew everyone else away. Like, there was no comparison. She was so heads and tails the best person who had come in for the role. And we had seen a lot of wonderful actors, including Carrie, who was very good in her audition. She did a nice job. Laurie was amazing, and Laurie is a sweetheart, and I love Laurie. So I was like, yeah, I'm hiring Laurie Holden. Sean, quote unquote, she's too fucking pretty.
Oh.
What?
Wow.
She's too pretty? He told me that the women in the audience would hate her.
What?
Yep. I was truly not allowed to cast her. I was forbidden casting her. By the way, Laurie Holden had already won awards in Canada. She had been acting since she was a little girl. So she had won awards. She had played Anna Karenina, I believe, at one point in Canada as a teenager, and had won awards for that performance. And I was like, so you're not going to let me have an award-winning actress who's gorgeous, who is like stop-a-clock beautiful, and I have to hire a girl who's never done a movie before, like done nothing. And again, I liked Carrie. Carrie was good. She's talented. She was a talented woman. But yeah, we had problems. Carrie and I had problems. Yes. Again, Carrie and I, look, the good news, here's the thing I can say about Carrie. We ended up seeing each other a little over a decade after the film was made. And we kind of buried the hatchet, which was really good. And I'm very happy that we did. And she left the business for very obvious reasons. She left the business. She was, as Steven Spielberg would say, talented, but difficult.
Okay.
And you know what? She has a beautiful family. She's got a wonderful life. God bless her. Like, I'm so glad that she found a path that gave her a happy existence. I think that's beautiful and amazing. So I have nothing negative to say about Carrie. I think Carrie is a good person, and I think this industry was probably the wrong place for Carrie to make a life. That's all.
Okay.
You know. But yes, you're right. Sean was. It is a bizarre thing that he wouldn't let me hire the award-winning actress who was really pretty and everybody liked. It's bizarre.
That is bizarre.
I have my theories, but I don't want to get into a lawsuit.
It's understandable. So one of the things that I like about Jason Goes to Hell, and as a fan of the franchise, is that by the time you're on the 9th film, you can't just have the same song and dance routine that we've seen. Jason goes to a camp, he kills a bunch of horny teenagers, they do drugs, like wash, rinse, repeat. Those are fun. I love slasher movies, but
Me too.
What I like about your film is that you actually bring more mythology and story to it than 8 films worth does not have the same amount of like lore and backstory that your one film does. Was this always your intention to try to like open up the mythology and try to make it a greater universe? Or
Yes, from day one. Here's the thing. As a fan of those movies, and such a fan of those movies, I saw every one of them in the theater several times each. I was that guy. Part 6 for me is still like I face east when Part 6 is playing, because I think it's such a remarkable piece of cinema, and I think that what Tom did on that movie is so clever and interesting and funny and reinventing the series. My problem with the series, even as a young kid, my problem was none of it made sense. From Part 1 to Part 2, you've got this kid who was in a lake for 30 years who jumps up at the end. He's still a little hydrocephalic-headed little boy who's got some muck on him. But it's my friend Ari Lehman from school. Like, it's a kid I knew. So he's a kid. And then 2 weeks later, Alice is at her house and is murdered by a full-grown man wearing clothes with no muck on him. How did this kid go from being a child to gaining 130 pounds, learning how to drive, finding clothes that fit him, learning how to read, because the only way you could find somebody back then was you had to go through the yellow pages, and then carry this woman's body back and his mom's head to put in his ramshackled cabin in Crystal Lake? I mean, none of that makes sense. Then you've got Part 4, where Corey Feldman chops up Jason's head into hamburger meat, which was an incredibly satisfying, awesome ending, right?
Yeah.
But in Part 6, he's got a head. Jason's got a head. They dig him up. They stick a thing through his heart. Lightning strikes. Frankenstein's monster. Boom. He's alive. He's the Frankenstein monster, Jason Zombie. Okay, I'm with you. I get it. But now it's a monster movie. By the way, it's a monster movie from part 2 on. He's chopped up so many times. He never goes to a hospital. He doesn't have a magic potion that stops the bleeding. He would be dead. So you're dealing with a monster movie all the way through, but no one ever calls it a monster movie. It's just this little boy from the lake. Did I ever tell you about Jason? I give it to you straight about Jason. Oh, stop it. So here's the thing. We get to part 9, and I'm like, okay, let's take it back to the beginning. Let's take it back to what Sean Cunningham was originally trying to do. So if it's a movie about a mother in grief who would do anything to have her Jason back, wouldn't she turn to the darkness? Wouldn't she turn to the forces of evil, even if she had to? Anything to resurrect her child? Wouldn't that be a thing she did? And so for me, I went, all right, one of my favorite movies of all time is the original Evil Dead. I grew up on that film. When I was a kid, you couldn't see it in theaters because it barely played in any theaters. But I got a bootleg VHS copy from an edit house in New York City, brought it back to my friends in Connecticut, and there I am, 12 years old, in my buddy's basement watching The Evil Dead and screaming my ass off. And so that movie, and by the way, the love I have for that movie is about, with no money and just a lot of ingenuity and a few friends getting together on weekends to make a movie, they made this piece of cinema that will be forever part of our lexicon. It's an amazing thing. So even as a child, I recognized how incredible that was. So I said, why can't you get her hands on the Necronomicon? And by the way, I'm so tired of people going, well, the Necronomicon was in the woods. Stop it. If you go back to the actual lore of the Necronomicon, there is not one Necronomicon. There are many Necronomicons. It's no different than the Bible. It's just the black magic version of that text. So here's this book of evil that can resurrect the dead. Now, if Pamela read from that book and resurrected her child, but her child is a handicapable kid who's stuck at the bottom of Crystal Lake in the dark, and he wakes up and doesn't know where he is, but can breathe underwater.
Yeah.
But he's in this prison. He's in this dark, cold prison, okay? Terrified and alone. And then one of the first things he sees is his mother by the edge of the lake. And he sees his mother's head get cut off. And so for the first time, he rears up out of the water to attack the woman that killed his mother. Well, now I believe that this kid crawls out of the lake, and because he is now Hell's assassin, because now he is one of the evil dead, this kid can grow to be whatever size he needs to be. He can resist any kind of punishment. Now, everything makes sense. The way I look at Jason Goes to Hell now, because time has passed, it's the Rogue One of the Friday the 13th franchise. Right? Oh, yeah. Who would put that 2-meter hole in the Death Star that if you shoot one thing down it, the whole thing blows up? Who would do that? Oh, right, Rogue One. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Jason Goes to Hell is the movie that explains all of this. The other thing, as far as the universe building was concerned, look, guys, I wanted to, when I was a kid, there was an episode of Scooby-Doo where suddenly Batman showed up.
I remember that one. Right?
Okay. That blew my, 8-year-old mind. I was like, wait a minute, Scooby-Doo knows Batman? And then 3 weeks later, the Harlem Globetrotters drove through. I was like, what is happening? And the other thing I hate about horror movies that Scream, of course, eventually jumps into is this idea that everybody in a horror movie has never seen a fucking horror movie. It's like those guys. It's like the Geico commercial. Let's go hide behind the chainsaws. They always act like morons. So suddenly I went, wait a minute. What if all of these movies are all in the same universe, so that the people inside those movies have never seen these movies? They don't exist in their universe. There's no Nightmare on Elm Street in the land of Crystal Lake. Mm-hmm. And suddenly now anything goes. And a bad decision the way we see it isn't a bad decision the way they see it. So plus, New Line owned the rights to Freddy Krueger. And I was trying to come up with as many kind of in jokes and Easter eggs and ways I could connect all these movies together. And so I called New Line. I came up with an idea. I told Noel and Dean, who were stoned to the bejesus. We were all in our apartment together. I don't partake, but they did. They were stoned out of their minds. We were giggling about silly shit I could do in the movie. And I suddenly went, wait a minute, doesn't New Line own Freddy outright? And they're like, yeah, I think so. And I called Mike DeLuca and Mark Ordesky, got them up in the middle of the night, and pitched them this idea. And next thing I know, I had the glove on set. They were like, that's fucking brilliant. I'm like, okay. I said, you just killed Freddy, so he'd be in hell. Who better to drag Jason into hell than Freddy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So besides the glove, you also had the jungle gym in front of the Voorhees house was from the Birds.
Sure was.
The crate in his basement was from Creepshow. And
Yep.
then, of course, the Freddy glove. So when you got the Necronomicon and the Kandarian dagger,
yeah,
how did you end up getting? I know you visited the set of Army of Darkness. So how
I sure
did that
did.
whole situation come about?
What happened was K&B were doing Army of Darkness, and you know, I was really, really close friends with Bob Kurtzman, Howard Berger, and Greg Nicotero. And Bob and I are like brothers. I mean, we're still working together to this day. And so I told Bob my idea for what I wanted to do with Evil Dead, and he was like, "Man, why don't we ask Sam if we can just have one of the Necronomicons?" He's like, "There's a bunch of them." I was like, "Yeah, let's go do that." So I asked Sam, and Sam handed me a Necronomicon in a Ziploc baggie. I swear to God.
What was it like? You got to visit the Army of Darkness set, right?
I did. I even got to puppeteer a couple of the puppets on camera a couple times.
So you actually worked on the movie then too?
Yeah, truly as like a lark, because I was a director on set, and Sam and I had become friendly, and I had visited a couple of Sam had done like a couple of Taco Bell commercials that I was on set for, and so I wanted to kind of watch him work and see the way he worked. And so they just liked having me there, and it was like, you know, Bob was like, "You want to puppeteer these?" I'm like, "Yeah, I totally do." So yes, so
that is
it
pretty.
was awesome. It was amazing. I was out in the desert, and it would take them like 7 hours to get one shot off. It was one of the most remarkable experiences I've ever had.
So K&B Effects, which is like Greg Nicotero here, like you said, worked on the film. This one probably up until this point in the series, I think, has like the most elaborate gore effects makeup in the entire series. How was that working with K&B Effects, and was it kind of a challenge working with such I don't know, complicated special effects on set?
No, it really wasn't. And the reason why is that I was at K&B so much. I actually, in my closet behind me, I've got my K&B crew jacket. They made me an honorary member of the crew of the K&B team. So much so that in the middle of when we're in the Voorhees house, when Josh melts, when the whole melting man sequence, Howard Berger made me this belt that had saddlebags on it, and I had a ladle in each one. One saddlebag was filled with blood, and one was filled with pus, so that I could dress the set as I wanted to, because I had such specific ideas about the effects work. So they were like, "No, man, you should please do what you need to do." So I understood the effects. The other thing is, I hired Bob Kurtzman as my second unit director. And the reason I did that was specifically for the effects, because I was like, look, you understand the mechanism of these creatures. You know how they need to be lit. Show us, tell us. Like, I hate directors that think they're the expert on everything. That's just stupid. That's just a bad idea. And so when in doubt, ask the people who actually know what the fuck they're doing, given those effects. So I gave the guys so much room to be able to operate their effects that, guys, you have to remember, I had a 37-day shoot. Every single day of the movie had at least one huge makeup effect and one stunt every single day. That's crazy. Like, for a first-time filmmaker, that is an insane thing to try to pull off.
Yeah.
So, look, the other thing is, okay, here's a great example. So we could not afford any more effects, and Greg Nicotero was like ready to kill me because I kept convincing Bob to do more and more shit. Greg literally was like, I'm losing money on this movie. I'm like, well, it's going to be awesome, though. So there's the scene when Josh, the deputy, before he becomes possessed, Josh is meeting with that woman who's cheating on her husband in the parking lot, right? And they by the way, that woman was one of our casting associates.
Okay.
Oh,
Who was also an actress. So I was like, you should be in the movie. You're great. So she was like, oh my God, I'd love to. So we created that little role and she did. But I wanted to kill her off, but there was no money, right? And it was like, I want her head to get crushed in the car door. And I knew the effect I wanted. And Bob was like, Adam, if I go to Greg to make another Change-O head, he'll kill me. He'll actually just shoot me in the face. So I said, okay, can we put a wig on the actress? And they were like, sure, we can get her a wig. That's no problem. So I said, get her a wig and then get me a big piece of foam. You're like, okay. So I wrapped a piece of foam in like a Tootsie Roll. I put the wig on top of it and I put it in the door and I said, slam the door. That's the effect in the movie.
oh,
That's one of the when we were rewatching it, that we actually rewound that part because I don't know why that kill is so quick and effective. It's kind of funny. It's almost like a blink and you miss it too.
That's the idea.
yeah.
Look, guys. I mean, my favorite scene, one of my two favorite scenes, because I've got a couple, but one of my favorite scenes in the movie is of course the Von Helsing scene in the middle of the film between Steven and Duke in the prison, right?
Yeah.
And why I love that scene so much is, one, Stephen Williams is the kind of madman that, and I was saying earlier to Mike, Jason Goes to Hell is the first, and I think the only Friday the 13th movie that had a rehearsal period. I offered my actors a month of rehearsal if they wanted it. And like my actors were like, wait a minute, we're going to rehearse this movie? I said, if you want to, I'm available. And I truly had like a theater camp for a month before I shot the film.
Wow.
So in that effort, guys like Stephen Williams would be like, look, what if we played this scene like a real prison scene, like a movie about prison? I'm like, okay. And he said, so like when I first asked for John's hand, like I'm going to grab it and I'm going to caress it. And I was like, oh. And he said, yeah, so that he thinks like what I'm asking for when I say the price is really high, he's going to be thinking it's, that I want him to give me a hand job. Like that this is a prison movie. I was like, oh, this is so wrong and so good. I'm like, this is brilliant. And next thing you know, we're prepping for that. And we didn't tell John LeMay at first. We didn't let him know that it was going to go this way. So John's reaction in that moment is John's reaction. I had two cameras on them, and John is reacting to that moment, right? So then when he does the actual finger breaks, there's no makeup, guys. I didn't break any fingers. I didn't do anything. It's acting. It's just this. And you hear that horrible crack, and you're like, oh! And I mean, I'm telling you guys, in a movie theater, there was nothing more painful for the audience to live through than those finger snaps. I mean, it was crazy. And by the way, this is a great story. It's a great story. So there was our sound mixer on the movie was this brilliant guy who had this company called Sound One in Hollywood. And there was this guy, Phil, who recorded the sound. Phil had an accident. I don't know when, but he had an accident where he had lost these three fingers. Okay. When I would come into the studio in the morning and I'd say to Sean, how's it sounding? He goes, well, we're getting as much sound as 7 fingers can get us. That was literally Sean's idea of hilarity. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, wow, wow. Okay, Sean, thanks. But literally this guy's nickname was 7 Finger Phil.
7 Finger Phil?
7 Finger Phil. We were mixing the sound on that scene, on the finger breaks. And it was subtle. Like the sound was subtle. And I was like, Phil, stop. I gotta have more sound. Like I gotta feel that, right? So he's like, all right, I'll put him up. So he'd put him up, and it was like a little bit louder. I mean, this went back and forth for like 20 minutes of me going, Phil, I want more sound. And I said, Phil, I need the sound. I need it to sound like it hurts my back teeth. I want that much sound.
Mm-hmm.
And finally, Phil turns around and he goes, I think I know what the sound of finger breaking is. Like that. And my response was, Phil, get your stubs out of my face and turn up the fucking sound. We're at the first screening of the movie. We're at the first test screening. Those finger breaks happen. The audience is hiding behind their chairs. They are so freaked out from this scene. Each time one of those fingers snapped, they're like, oh, God! I mean, it was like amazing, right? And I just turned to Phil, and I just went, and he looked at me, he was like, But he knew. He knew. It was like, come on, man, it's a fucking horror movie. Don't give me the real sound. I want sound. I want it to frighten people. So that is the origins of the finger break noises. But again, Bob Kurtzman just went in there and painted the fingers a little bit in between each shot to just make them a little more bruised, and that he had these breaks. But there's no makeup in that. So some of the most effective makeup in the film are very subtle, very little things that didn't take a lot, but that we just knew how to fake it out for the audience to the point where they really felt something. That way, when you get things like, the split camper in the middle of the movie, that becomes this like moment, So we couldn't let everything be that. We had to have subtle in order to get to those moments.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the finger breaking scene was brilliant to me because you get to tell all this exposition without just a talking head sitting there telling you a story around the campfire.
Yeah,
you add some excitement to it,
I didn't think of that either. That's true, though.
Well, no, that's the look. That scene is called the Von Helsing scene, based on Von Helsing from the Dracula movies. And those scenes, when Von Helsing has to tell Harker the way you kill Dracula, that's the most boring scene in the movie. That's when everybody wants to go get a sandwich.
Yes.
So for Dean and I, we kept challenging each other going, okay, we have got 8 pages of bullshit to tell the audience, right? And it's complicated bullshit, right? So how do we keep them interested in that information? Well, if the audience has to pay with the hero to get the information, if getting the information is this thing that includes pain, so we're giving the audience these cringy moments, but now they're like, no, don't give him another finger, but he has to know how to save Jessica. You're suddenly invested in a real way. And I will tell you, from that movie on, I never do a Von Helsing scene without someone be paying for the information. They have to pay. And here's the other thing that's great about that scene, even though it's such nonsense, but it's great nonsense. It's also Duke preparing this kid for battle.
Mm-hmm.
Because here's this soft, ne'er-do-well kid who is a dad and doesn't even know it. Like, he doesn't even know he has a daughter. He's that out to lunch.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy goes, this is the guy I got to send in to convince the mother of his child that this freight train is coming. This is the guy who has to be the warrior. And so it's sort of the entire Mr. Miyagi sequence in 5 minutes in the middle of Jason Goes to Hell.
That's awesome.
So that was the idea.
One of the things that you mentioned was like the stroking of the hand. There's also the scene in the movie where which you've talked about many times, with the naked man being shaved by Jason.
Yep.
And in recent years, it's Jason Goes to Hell has kind of been reassessed as one of a gay or a queer horror film. It's kind of been reclaimed as that.
Mm-hmm.
Was this subtext intentional?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about it being claimed as a kind of a queer horror film now?
Look, Jason Goes to Hell is the first Friday 13th, and because I demanded it, where there was as much male nudity as female nudity.
Mm-hmm.
I felt there was a sexism to the series that was grotesque, and I was like, and by the way, more of our audience was women than men. So I'm like, what are we doing? Like, listen, I'm sure the lesbians in the crowd are loving the female nudity. That's awesome, and have at it, enjoy. But I'm sorry, we're not doing anything for gay young men, and we're not doing anything for straight girls in these movies. We're like, and the first movie, by the way, I mean, Kevin Bacon's ass is like on display for the most ridiculously long period of time. So God bless. And by the way, there's not one woman who walks out of Friday the 13th and doesn't go like, man, Kevin Bacon's ass. Of course they do. It's a great ass. Well done. Look, I'm a straight guy, but I think that my audience should be, I think the entire audience should be included in the fun of a movie. And if we're going to have nudity, and if we're going to have interaction between characters, I don't think that and I felt this way when I was 22. And again, guys, remember, I was raised on Broadway. I had a ton of friends in New York who passed away from AIDS. I went through all of this. These were my people. I love my community. I love the community of artists. And so for me, it was like, I was going to be inclusive no matter what. The other thing, and the reason the shaving scene is there in particular, was, okay, the problem with the Friday the 13th franchise is that it stopped being scary. Because the minute the villain becomes the hero, what are you afraid of? There's nothing to fear anymore because you're cheering when the kills happen. You're not scared when they happen. You want them to happen.
Yeah.
And for me, it's why so many sequels. Look, I think the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels are the trickiest of them all, because while there's an inventiveness and a creativeness around the directing of those movies that I think is astounding, you're never frightened because you're laughing the whole movie. Freddy gets funnier and funnier. Well, that's not scary. Like, we're going to lose why these movies existed. The first Nightmare on Elm Street is terrifying. The first Friday the 13th is scary. It's a little boring, let's be honest. The first Friday the 13th. It's a little fucking boring. It was scary as shit.
I love your bluntness about...
Well, I mean, it just is. By the way, Friday the 13th Part 2 is scary. Like, it's still scary, and that's not a boring movie. Like, that's a weirdly entertaining movie. But I also think because Steve Miner was a tremendous talent. Damn Skippy. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, look, the thing about the shaving scene was that I wanted to scare my audience, and I wanted my audience to feel unsafe. Like, this filmmaker could do anything at any moment. I wanted them to be frightened of me the same way they were frightened of the movie. When that scene came on, if I would sit in the front of the theater and watch the audience. I wouldn't watch the movie. I knew the movie too well. I would watch the audience to see how they reacted, which is a trick I learned from Brian DePalma when I worked with him in New York. And
okay,
I did. And I would watch the audience, and every straight man in the audience in that scene did not know what to do with themselves. They were so freaked out. They were so uncomfortable and out of their minds. And I was like, yep, that worked. That scared them. That actually scared them. They didn't know what to do. And I love how straight guys react to that scene. Like, they get really almost aggressive with me about it. And I'm like, why did you have to put that in the movie? I'm like, because you're still remembering it. It's still in your head. How did I get in your head so well? I'm still in there. You're still thinking about that scene. Made you uncomfortable, didn't it?
Tapped into an irrational fear.
Yeah.
By the way, and I doubled it up because it's a black man kissing a white man. I mean, everything about it is designed to make you have to think about what you're thinking about. Like, now I'm dealing with you. I'm not just dealing with what's on screen. I'm dealing with your head. So that was kind of what I was trying to do. I was mind fucking the audience a little bit, and it worked, because I'm telling you, people still ask me about it to this day. Case in point.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the awesome Michelle Clooney kill where she gets impaled with the tent spike and split up the middle. Could you tell us a little bit about how you conceived that and how you executed it on set? Yeah, absolutely. What had happened was that sequence, the entire sequence with Michelle, Michael Silver, and Catherine Atwood, which is one of the best things in the movie, that whole sequence was not in the original film, wasn't in the original script. We had shot the whole movie, and when we had a test screening of the movie, the one thing they wanted
was they wanted some campers killed while doing Friday the 13th-ish things, right? So that's something that people wanted.
Yeah.
So we're like, okay, let's try to construct that scene. My problem was I would not put a scene in the movie where sex equals death. I hated that idea. I always hated it, even as a kid. I was like, what I love about these movies is that the Christian right was always coming after these films for immorality. And I'm like, what is wrong with you? We're actually doing your work for you.
Yeah.
Like, if you smoke drugs, if you drink, if you have sex, you get murdered. We're a campaign slogan for you guys. So it always bugged me because I was like, kids shouldn't be afraid of having sex. That's nuts. Like, why are we making that a fearful thing?
Yeah.
But I was totally cool with unsafe sex equaling death, which is why the condom became such an important part of that sequence. And by the way, the Wall Street Journal gave us a rave review and called our film a return to morality. I swear to God.
A return to morality.
Yes, because of that scene. So when we so Sean Cunningham had brought us all back. We were all going to go and do these reshoots, or not reshoots. We were going to do these additional shoots. So I had 2 days to shoot additional footage. And so I hired Michelle, Michael, and Catherine, brought Michelle in for her makeup, and we had to cast her entire body. And Michelle is, I literally was just on the phone with her yesterday. Michelle is amazing. Like, she's like truly one of the best people I've ever worked with. She's adorable, and she's funny and super freaking smart. If you've never seen her work on Queer as Folk, she's one of the main cast members of that show. She is so insanely good. So anyway, Michelle came in, and it was like her first or second movie. She immediately dropped trow at K&B, like had no problem getting into this position where I'm like telling her to like look like she's having this mind-blowing orgasm that then we have to freeze her in that so that we can put all this goop all over her head and body. And truly, it's like 5 of the most like FX looking dudes, like just these like big sort of like and like all around this beautiful naked woman just slopping all this like cold alginate all over her. It was hilarious. We made 2 different bodies. One where the spike would pop out, and the other that was pre-torn with everything exposed, and you could see all the guts on it. And that would just flap open, right? So we would just pull the thing up, and we would just put a lining of skin around the cut, and that's what we would tear, right? To reset it would take a few minutes, but that was the idea.
I can't even tell when I watch it.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah,
it looks really good, doesn't it?
Fantastic effect.
The first time we did it is the one we used.
Really?
We shot it twice, but the first one is the one we used because it looked so good. And here's the thing. I only had so much money, and that really tapped out my budget on effects for that whole sequence. So the Catherine Atwood thing is just, a straight razor going across the screen. It was also a DePalma thing. It's Dressed to Kill. That's where I got that.
I knew that from that.
Totally what it's from. It was my nod to Brian. And then we just, Bob did out of the kit makeup to slash her up. And then, Michael Silver, I was like, I just want to hear the sound of his head popping. So right after you hear him screaming, you hear the sound of me stomping on a cantaloupe. So that's the sound that you hear on screen.
So technically, you played Jason for a moment then.
No, actually, I do all of Jason's vocals in the entire movie.
Oh, okay.
All of the grunting when he's getting shot, when he's getting blown up, all that stuff, the yell, all that's me.
I thought that was Kane Hodder. I was not even aware of that.
That's me. Yep.
Really?
Yep. Because Sean was too cheap to bring anybody back to do their own ADR. My girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife and writing partner and producing partner for all these years, Deborah Sullivan, she is almost every single scream or pant, or she is most of the female voicing noises throughout the entire film. And in fact, she even has a line. She says "shit." She replaced the line for Julie Michaels, who was unavailable to come in. So Deborah's the one who goes "shit."
Oh,
When she turns around, you see her boobs.
oh okay.
Oh.
That's Deborah.
Well, one of the many things that I love about this movie is the supporting characters. There's so many interesting characters and so many little subtle things, like Rusty Schwimmer and Leslie Jordan as the diner owners. They were so good, such small parts, but they stood out. Just like when Steve comes barging in the diner and he pulls the gun on them, and Leslie Jordan is on the side eating chips.
Yep.
I thought that was so hilarious. How much of that was improvised, stuff like that?
It was all done in rehearsal. So we would rehearse the scene and create all those ideas, and then lock them in.
Okay.
Here's the thing: when you're dealing with firearms, when you're dealing with stunts, when you're dealing with camera movement, all that stuff, improving sounds really fun. And listen, when you're doing a comedy and the camera's locked off and nothing's going to explode in the background, you can improv all day long and catch what you can catch. For my money, this is kind of a Scorsese thing. Another person I worked with when I was in New York. I worked on Goodfellas.
You worked on Goodfellas?
I did. I worked on Goodfellas when I was in college. Yeah.
What the hell?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
So here's the thing, and this is what Marty will do. Improv during rehearsal. Then you know it and you lock it down. Because when people's safety is at concern, when time is a concern, when you're running out of your day, you can't have people fucking around on set. It's like, no, this is the moment. Now, by the way, if somebody has a moment of inspiration and something happens, great. You want to catch it and capture it. But you don't want that to be the mode in which you work. It sounds really fun. It's not fun. Your day gets killed by shit like that. So you have to have a certain semblance of like, this is now what we're going to do. By the way, Leslie, I had him eating in almost every sequence. So it was like a constant joke that Leslie is this tiny little man, and he's married to Rusty, who is this powerhouse of a woman.
Yeah.
And so the joke was that Leslie, of course, is the one who's always eating, who's got the metabolism that moves too quickly.
Okay.
And then Adam Cranner, who played their son, who played Ward, is one of my closest friends, again, since we were 8 years old.
Wow.
So Adam, brilliant actor, just amazing talent. Adam, that scene between him and John LeMay, for me, is the signature scene of what I was trying to do from a character and performance standpoint for this movie. The scene where he comes in, where Stephen Freeman sees his child for the first time. And in the back room of that, and she's been put, by the way, you can always tell a 23-year-old man was directing the movie when a baby is put in a cardboard box in the back of a diner.
That was adorable, though.
It's adorable and it's so stupid. But he comes in and he sees his baby for the first time. And by the way, that little girl, Brooke, oh my God, we're still buddies. She's now a grown-up woman, and she's amazing and lovely and just an incredible person. But anyway, John sees the baby, and then Ward walks in the back, and John is a wanted man at this point. And that moment where he, where Stephen says, I never met my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And Ward pulls the keys out of his pocket and tosses them to him and tells him to get the hell out of here.
Mm-hmm.
For me, what that was about was that John LeMay is in a Letterman jacket the whole movie.
Mm-hmm.
And my idea was, here's a guy who was a sporto. Here's a guy who was, the popular kid in the John Hughes movie who ended up getting stuck in town in a dead-end job, got a girl pregnant who left him, had that life. But here's this kid who he knew in high school, because they're the same age, and this kid in high school gave him the keys to his car, which means John LeMay back in the day would have been the guy who was friends with that kid, with the guy who wouldn't have been one of the popular kids. And so we had all of these relationships that we had built that we talked about for months before we shot the movie, so that every actor knew they had all this backstory. So that scene is like rich with backstory, even though it's like 5 lines. But it's one of my favorite things in the whole film, because I go, you can see the entire world of this town in that moment.
Yeah, and his relationship
awesome.
with the deputy was his relationship with the deputy as well.
Yeah.
I thought that was really effective.
And the deputy is my brother. That's my brother, Kip Marcus.
Oh, cool.
That's it.
I mean, for me, I know, all right, your film is a divisive film amongst the Friday the 13th fans.
It is.
I like it, but I mean, I think another thing besides from it being so different that makes it stand out is, like Michael said, everything about it feels lived in. Like, you feel like it's actually a place. They don't feel like, a lot of the Friday, I mean, the best ones, the characters just seem like they were imported in, and they don't have, I don't know, I guess any kind of inner life or kind of history. Just by the way that the actors and the characters are communicating with each other in the diner and everything, it implies a whole history behind this town.
Totally.
Without ever explaining it. And I think that's actually something really special, especially to be doing in the 9th film in a slasher franchise. To bring that to it is really impressive.
Thank you. Well, look, I took it very seriously. I didn't treat it like a job. I treated it like a movie that was, a dream to make. Mm-hmm. And look, if you look back at the Friday films that work the best, the Tommy Jarvis character, anyone who played Tommy Jarvis is lucky, because they do have a life that extends past the one movie. So there is a history to the character. But, the reason why Amy Steele is the most loved final girl of all the movies is because Amy Steele is a really good actress and did her work. Like, she has a life in that movie. You feel like, here's the thing, and by the way, this is a Sean Cunningham thing that's a positive. I'm not always just going to shit on Sean. He gave me my career, so I have to honor him. He is also one of the best line producers I've ever worked with. What he was able to do on set was amazing. What I can tell you, though, is one of the things that he describes the movie as, and that we designed the movie to be this, was, as I said earlier, once the villain becomes the hero, you're screwed, because it can't be scary anymore. So the idea of the villain being scary, the movie, I love when people say it's based on The Hidden. No, it's not. I hadn't seen The Hidden when I wrote the movie. I'd never seen the movie. So it's based on Jaws. You know how you know that? Because Creighton Duke says, I'll get you the mask, the machete, the whole damn thing. We literally took that line out of Jaws so that people would know we were doing our homage to Jaws. Because here's the thing that's great about Jaws. No one is cheering for the fucking shark.
Yeah.
They're cheering for those 3 men. They're cheering for his wife and kids. They're even cheering for the mayor. Because you know those people. You care about those people. You don't care about the fucking shark. The shark is the monster. So the idea that I made a Jason movie where you don't know where Jason's coming from. You don't know who is Jason, in a much more of sort of The Thing sort of way. I was trying to give us a shark under the water. And you don't identify with the shark. You identify with the people swimming. And that truly came from Sean Cunningham. That was definitely that. And one of the things Sean told me he was 100% right, which is, look, you are not competing against the other Friday the 13th movies. That's a mistake. You are competing with Terminator 2. Because the audience pays the same money to go see Terminator 2 that they go to pay to see your movie. So what are you going to give them with a $2.5 million budget that James Cameron can't give them with $150 million? What do you give them? And so I was always trying to top whatever the next thought was in Jason Goes to Hell. It's why the movie's so insane. I mean, it's insane. Yeah. I know that. I'm not, I know it's nuts, but it was nuts by design. Because I was like, I want to give people an experience that they won't forget. By the way, some people hate it, and that's okay. I'm cool with that. Like, I'm fine. My favorite comment, and I hear it all the time, is, Jason Goes to Hell is a badass horror movie. It's total dog shit as a Friday the 13th movie, but it's a fucking great horror movie. I'm like, okay, all right.
That's
Like,
I wanted.
what do I do?
So this movie actually, it just made its Blu-ray debut. Am I correct? At least in the United States.
Well, it's been on Blu-ray before in that terrible box set that was released about a decade ago. But because they put the neutered version in there with no extras, no commentary, no nothing. So yes, it's the first time that the unrated, all extras, all commentaries, all the good, the juicy stuff. Yes, it's the first time it's been available.
Did you get the box? Oh, go on, Mike.
I was just going to say, one of the things that was cut out of the movie was the demon Jason, which was cut out because of the test audiences not understanding it. So
Yes.
Tell us about that being cut, and was there anything else cut because of the test audiences?
There wasn't a ton cut from the test audiences. We did more adding than cutting for test audiences. A lot was cut for time because New Line wanted the movie to be under 90 minutes because you get a full extra screening per day if your movie is under 90 minutes. So you make, it's like 17% more money on opening weekend, and the movie came in number 2 under The Fugitive, which was huge. So we made a ton of money at the box office. So that was New Line's plan. So we did lose a lot of like great stuff, like, Creighton Duke's whole explanation of, why he's been chasing Jason. That went away, which breaks my heart because I love that material. The thing about the demon was they could understand the demon coming out of my brother's neck. That they got.
Mm-hmm.
They couldn't understand how this huge demon went under the floorboards and suddenly became Jason. That's where their brains weren't connecting that tissue, which is a shame because the demon Jason was badass. I mean, it was so crazy. And we had hired an actor who was a military guy who had lost his legs. And so here's this guy crawling around the floor, like power crawling across the floor with this huge tail whipping behind him. It was guys, it was like a fucking alligator in the middle of our set. It was incredible.
Oh, yeah.
It was incredible. So that is truly a shame and heartbreaking that left the movie. I understand why it did. It really did bump people. They didn't know what to make of it. So then, of course, we had to have the demon Jason, go into Erin Gray's dead body. Mm-hmm. And we had to show that, which Erin was so pissed at me. Oh my God, she was so angry at me. We've made up since, thank goodness. But that was a bad moment. So yeah, we ended up changing that mythology just to make it more palatable and easier for the audience to get what was going on, and that worked. So I can't bemoan that. I will say, losing a lot of the tree demons and stuff at the end of the movie was heartbreaking. Like, there's a lot of cool animated stuff that the K&B guys did that just didn't work. It's not even that the art was incredible. It just didn't work. So there are certain babies that left for good reason. Honestly, I wish I could recut that stuff now and have a few dollars to do digital, because I could turn that stuff into gold. But at the time, there was no digital, so we were working with what we could.
When they were putting together this box set, did they approach, like, I know you're on the special features, did you?
Dude, I worked on that set for 2 years.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah.
So did you attempt to try to, like, see if they would allow you to do your, like, a recut version?
Uh-huh. You
did, and it didn't work out?
Warner Brothers wouldn't allow it.
Oh, okay.
Warner owns the movies now, and they simply would not. They have all the archival stuff. There was a petition that went around that I think got like 20,000 signatures on it a couple of years ago. People wanting me to do that, and I was like, "You don't even have to pay me. Like, I'll just come in for free and do it." But I think that they were, you'd have to hire a union editor, blah 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 blah, and they didn't want to spend the money, which is a shame. Because I think there's money in them hills if you actually gave people a new version of the movie. And who knows? They could ask me for it later down the line. Who knows?
Okay.
I'd be happy and willing to do it.
Okay.
But at least people now can see the uncut version of the movie, which at least has all the gore and, it's a better version of the movie, plain and simple.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You said that you average like 42 setups per day, and that is massive. Does that come from the efficiency that you were taught in film school?
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time. Well, when I first showed up, my first day on set, I had a shot list that was 50 shots long. And I was immediately pulled aside by Sean Cunningham, my DP Bill Dill, who is a god, and my first AD, Sam Mahoney. Sam went from my movie to Pulp Fiction.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So Sam's a badass. Anyway, they pulled me aside, and this is my first day. And they were like, Adam, no. I'm like, what do you mean no? They said 50 shots? You can't even have half that many shots. What are you, insane? So there's a photograph that I have in my office of me from the back. It's the set photographer took a picture of me, and I'm sitting at one of the lunch tables at the beginning of the day before we shoot anything, and you see me cutting down my shot list.
Mm-hmm.
So I presented a shot list, I think it was 24 shots, and I was allowed to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I got 26 shots on the first day. Okay. By the next day, I walked in with a 20 shot list, right? That's it, 20 shots.
Mm-hmm.
I got over 30 shots on my next day.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. Everything on set comes from the head down.
Mm-hmm.
I work like a demon. I never stop working. I don't sit down. I don't tell jokes. There's no bullshit for me. It's all get it done. And I move faster than any AD I've ever worked with. Most of my ADs are like, going over to craft service to get a pretzel. And I'm like, all right, next shot, let's go. So I'm that guy. Plus, I have never made anyone feel like they can't come to me with a suggestion or an idea. Okay. And I don't care if you're the PA. If there's something you see that's wrong, or you see something that could be funnier or better or scarier, tell me about it. Mm-hmm. The reason why is that when I make a movie, look, even though I went to NYU, which is, the school that revolves around the auteur theory, which I think is a bunch of bullshit. Movies are made by teams. They're not made by one person. That's just a big freaking lie. For me, I want every single person on my set to feel like they're making their movie. Not my movie. They're making their movie. Everyone has ownership. When we all get to the theater together, you should be saying, oh, I did that. You should want to say that. Okay?
Yeah.
If everybody feels like it's their movie, they work 10 times fucking harder on that movie.
That makes sense.
That's the difference. And so for me, I feel like if you make everybody feel like it's a collaboration, you actually have a chance to be able to do 42 setups a day. And that's what I ended up doing. Was I doubled the and by the way, it's also why I was able to look, 3 days into dailies, New Line stopped coming to set.
So they gave you had
he's got it.
So you had a lot of creative freedom on this movie then, especially for somebody so young to have that kind of free reign and not have the studios up your ass.
I did. Yeah, no. And look, you also have to remember, I was working at a studio where the lunatics had taken over the asylum a little bit. I mean, Mike DeLuca and Mark Ordesky were only a few years older than I was. So I was in this like group of young people making movies, and I was also making the movie for no money. Guys, I shot the movie for $2.5 million. That's way less than the Paramount movies were made for. Way less. So there was a lot less to lose on these movies. I'm not saying the first Friday. I'm saying after the first Friday, they pumped a lot more money into these movies. And my film was, super freaking cheap.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, we've been talking about Jason Goes to Hell for a while. Are you ready to transition, Michael?
I'd love it.
Yeah. Okay. So, we're going to concentrate on Secret Santa, but I did have a couple of questions to ask you. You Let It Snow is a romantic comedy, and it takes place around Christmas time, kind of like your new movie, Secret Santa. Do you have a thing for Christmas or the holidays, or is it something that you like to explore from different angles?
Here's the thing. Let It Snow was really Let It Snow is in a weird way is almost a sequel to my student film at NYU. So You Like This Girl.
Okay.
And Let It Snow, which was originally called Snow Days. Let It Snow is it's less about Christmas and more about that kind of magical time midwinter in Connecticut on the East Coast when school would get canceled. And it was like when you would sit and listen to the radio at 6 a.m, waiting for them to cancel your school. And when it got canceled, you felt like you didn't feel like you got a day off. You felt like you got a fucking vacation. And the idea of falling in love on a snow day is this kind of magical high school idea. The problem is when you're an adult, there's no such thing as a snow day. By the way, even though right now during COVID, we're living like 9 months of snow days.
Yeah.
But there is something magical about it. And the idea of romance being connected to that concept of that day off. And when you're an adult, no one takes the day off. No one has the magical snow day. So it's really, the movie is about two young people who meet during a snow day, fall in love. And then when they're adults 10 years later, they only wish they could get back to that feeling of having that snow day so that they could rekindle the love they had for each other. So it's kind of what the movie is really about. So do I have a thing for Christmas? Fuck yeah. I really do. And a very mixed bag about Christmas, because my parents were married on Christmas Eve.
Oh,
Okay?
really?
And by the way, I'm Jewish. And both of my parents are Jewish.
Okay.
They got married on Christmas Eve because the decorating was so beautiful, and both my parents kind of loved the Christmas holiday. Like we all love that time of year. And being New Yorkers, like there's nothing better than Rockefeller Center on Christmas Eve. Like that's the coolest thing in the world. So my parents got married on Christmas Eve, and they would have this anniversary party every year that was a Christmas party, right? So as a kid, I got Hanukkah presents and I got Christmas. Like I got all of it. Like it was awesome, right?
So the
And
best
then
of both worlds.
Right. And then my parents got divorced. They broke up when I was 6. But they still had the party.
Mm.
And suddenly the party was a bunch of people who freaking hated each other. So there was this weird sort of thing around Christmas that got like really dark and ugly and strange, yet it was my favorite time of the year. So those two ideas got conflated, and suddenly I have real feelings about Christmas. I love Christmas, by the way. Like it is one of my favorite times of the year, but there is a darkness to it that I find hilarious.
Mhm.
And let's be honest, every family, especially these days, you show up to Christmas and half the family feels one way about things, half the family feels another way about things. You're going to get into horrible fucking arguments. You're always going to have that uncle you just wish you could just fucking punch in the face. Like everybody's got that. That's a universal thing. Yet we all have to act like we love each other and we're the best and it's family and isn't this great? But the truth is, family sucks sometimes.
Mhm.
And that's kind of, I have a real, that's a part of sort of my art brain goes to that place, that sort of hypocrisy of smiling at each other when you want to stick a fork in someone's neck.
Okay.
So you co-wrote Secret Santa with your wife, Deborah Sullivan, and she also co-wrote Texas Chainsaw with you in 2013.
Yep.
How did your working relationship come about where you started writing together?
When we met while I was doing post for Jason Goes to Hell. That's how she ended up being so much of the ADR of the movie and Foley of the movie. We met during then, and I fell in love with her instantly. We were just, it was kismet, and we've been together ever since. She was a playwright, and she had been writing plays because she's an actor. She's writing plays for her to be in. And she had won a bunch of awards for her playwriting. She's a brilliant playwright. So I was working on a script right after Jason Goes to Hell. I was doing a movie called Black Autumn. And while I was writing it, she would read the pages and she would give great suggestions and stuff. And I said, Deb, why aren't we working together? Like we work so well together. We get along so well. Why don't we write together? And so we started writing together, and truly, I mean, we've sold dozens of scripts. We have screenplays at every major studio.
Mm-hmm.
And it just got to a place where there was this Marcus and Sullivan brand that sort of emerged, and we never stopped. Like, we just kept working together. So for a few years there, I was working with my brother Kip right after we did Let It Snow, and we wrote a bunch of TV together. Mm-hmm. So there was the Marcus brothers, but there was always Marcus and Sullivan. And so I got to tell you, I love writing with a partner, but I really love writing with a partner of the opposite sex because it gives a different perspective to everything we write. And the funny thing is, I happen to write women better, and Deb writes men better.
Interesting.
Because we listen more to the opposite sex. So we're more honest in our writing for those sexes. So yeah, I love writing with my wife. She's a genius. She's brilliant.
So the writing process between you and your wife, I could already tell based on what you were sharing with me about your experiences with Christmas, where some of the ideas for that movie came from.
Sure.
And it becoming very clear.
Yeah.
Was it like a mix between your perspective and like, I guess, experiences that you and your wife had during Christmas time?
Yes, a little bit. I will tell you, Deborah would be the first one to tell you, like, Secret Santa came out of my head.
Okay.
It really did. It came out of my brain, and it is very autobiographical in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. There is look, we wrote Secret Santa in 21 days. Okay. Start to finish, like concept to finish line, 21 days. We did one rewrite after a cast reading. So we wrote that movie from October 31st. Halloween is when I got the call from our producing partner, Brian Sexton, who is my producing partner in Skeleton Crew. Mm-hmm. He called and said, "We need a horror movie. We need it now. I need a horror movie to sell for us." And I said, "Okay." He says, "What do we got that we can make for no money?" It's like, I don't know. So I went and looked at our library, and I was like, nothing really would work for no money, especially at this time of year. So I said, "Give me a couple minutes. Let me come up with something." So I called our friend Pat Destro, and one of the things you guys might not know about me is that for the last 25 years, I've been teaching acting and directing in Los Angeles at my own studio. Mm-hmm. And so I have this team of actors that have become my Skeleton Crew troupe, because the way I used to work in New York, I worked in theater companies, and I had my own theater company. So I always had this team of actors that I would call on whenever I was doing a play. I wanted the same thing for film. Mm-hmm. So I've got this incredible family of actors now that I work with every week, and some people that have been in my class for over 20 years. So anyway, I called this woman, Pat Destro, who's been a student of mine for, I think, 14 years now. And I said, "Look, Pat," I said, "that house you have in Big Bear, you told me that I could shoot there." She's like, "Anytime you want." I said, "Great. I have a movie I want to shoot there, but I also want you to be in the film. I've got a great part for you." She was like, "Awesome." I said, "Can you go and ask all your neighbors if they will keep their decorations up through the second week of January? Just don't take their decorations down. I'll pay them to do it, but just don't take them down." She said, "You don't pay anybody. I'll take care of it." I said, "Great." 10 minutes later, she calls me. She goes, "Everybody's going to keep their decorations up for you." I said, "Done."
Awesome.
So now I knew I have a place, and I'm art directed. My set is dressed. I'm done. Great. Mm-hmm. So then I said, okay, I'm going to make a movie about Christmas. I want to do a trapped location, sort of as almost a zombie movie at Christmas time. What is that movie? And on November 1st, I started writing Secret Santa. We finished the script November 21st. We did the first reading of the script on November 23rd. We did a second reading the first week of December. And then I shot the movie from January 5th to January 13th.
So that was shot in like just over a week?
It was shot in 11 days.
Wow.
And there was a separate day when I did outside shooting of other material for the film. So 12 days of principal photography, 21-day shoot, a month of pre-production. That's it.
Wow.
That was all soup to nuts.
Was it do you have a pretty large cast in this movie, like a really big cast of characters?
Yeah.
Was it hard to handle that many people in that short amount of time?
Nope.
Okay.
No, because again, I rehearse the crap out of people. Like,
Okay.
people know the material. They know. Look, I got to tell you, like, my partner, and you guys saw it on digital. You see the VOD, or did you see the DVD?
I rented it through Amazon.
Okay, great. If you ever get a chance, the DVD and the Blu-ray of the movie have a documentary on it.
Okay.
Called oh shoot, what's the name of the documentary? Sorry. I'll remember. Anyway, so there's a documentary on there that's a feature-length documentary. It's a 70-some minute, documentary about the making of the film. And my producing partner, who's been my partner for many years now, he talks about the sequence when Uncle Carter gets forked, and that whole action scene, right? And Brian always describes that as like, he's like, that's the moment I knew that I was working with the director I would work the rest of my life with.
Okay.
He's like, I watched Adam build that sequence in less than a day, that entire action sequence with 13 characters, all with different moving parts, with, there's over 70 stunts in that one section, which, by the way, my stunt coordinator who plays Gordon, the chef, the Freddie James, the bald guy, he's my stunt coordinator, has been for years. And he's an absolutely incredible actor. Freddie trains all of my actors once a week. We have a fight club that's attached to my classes so that all of my actors are able to do all their own stunt work. So all of those stunts, including guys like John Gilbert, the guy who plays the dad, he's doing his own stunt work in this. And that's because they are trained every week to be able to do this. So the thing is that I'm able to move all those moving parts because I've got a team that trusts me and because we work together like a family. So that Brian will always kind of reference that scene as like, that was the moment he was like, oh my God, like, can we work together forever?
Well, I love this cast, and a definite standout was the star A. Leslie Keys as April.
Yep.
Did you find her in the casting process, or were you already familiar with her?
No, she had been a student of mine for 5 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So did you write the part for her?
I wrote the part for her. I wrote the part for all the cast that I had. I called each person, said, hey, are you available this date to this date? The only person who wasn't available the entire time was the guy who played Uncle Carter. So he told me, and I said, great, I'll kill you first. That's literally how that happened.
Okay.
Michael Rady, who plays the boyfriend, April's boyfriend in the movie. Michael is the scumbag lawyer. Michael was my next door neighbor for years. He lived right across from me. And Michael is an amazing actor. If you've ever seen the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants movies, he played Costas, the Greek boy, in both those films, and became kind of a heartthrob. Michael's been top of show for 5 television series, major network shows. Michael now is the poster child of the Hallmark Channel. He does like 6 movies a year for them, right? So Michael and I had become really close friends. He started taking my class, right? Became part of the family. I walked out to him one afternoon. He's in his garage. He was building a bench. And I walk out and I'm like, hey, buddy, I have this idea for a movie. You want to be in it? And he was like, is it a horror movie? I said, yeah. He goes, you're doing a horror movie? He says, absolutely. He says, yeah, I'm in. I said, well, you want me to tell you what it's about? He goes, no, I'm in. You're doing a horror film. I'm in. I said, okay, cool. He said, do I die? I said, you bet. And I know how you're going to die, because Michael Rady looks a lot like my brother Kip. And if you remember what happens to my brother Kip in Jason Goes to Hell, I've had my brother's head in a box for 25 years in my basement. And I looked at Michael, I said, with very little changes, I know what I'm going to do to you. So when I called Bob Kurtzman to do the movie, I said, look, I have no money. I said, that's not me being cute. I have no money, nothing. I said, but I would never offer a movie to anybody before I'd give it to you. And he said, send me the script. An hour and a half later, he called me. He says, I'm in. Done. I'm in. Just fly me where I need to be. You can get me an assistant, a place to stay, and you feed us. We'll do the movie. I said, great. He said, but Adam, how the hell are we going to do this head, this makeup effect you want to do? Like, that's a huge money effect. I said, that's the one effect you don't have to worry about, Bob. He said, what do you mean I don't have to worry about it? I said, just trust me. Come to set. I got that handled. So I get to set. He turns me, and he's got, tables full of effects and bodies and whatnot. And he says, so where's the head? I said, I hand him a box. I'm like, what's in the box? He opens up the box. He laughed for about 20 minutes. It was my brother's head in the box, and it was in pristine condition. He's like, how the fuck? I said,
so it's the same prop from
literally the exact same head.
Oh, wow.
Yep. We redressed it slightly, made it a little more like Michael. Done. And by the way, it's back in my storage in my basement, so that I'll find another use for it, I'm sure, in a couple movies.
In case you ever have to behead him again.
Yeah.
A lot of what made that scene work is Nathan Hedrick as Jackson. Because that guy, he made the film feel unhinged and dangerous early on, even when it was playing out like a family drama. He made it seem dangerous. And
Nathan, what were we saying?
Did you cast him because he had done stunts before? I read that he'd done stunts on Hatchet 2, which was a lot of stunts.
Here's the thing about Nate. Nate, again, was an actor of mine for many, many years. He's a guy that I've been working with. Nate is, if you ever go to Universal Studios in LA, they have the Waterworld show, which is like, high falls and all this like explosions and crazy shit.
Saw it as a kid.
Great. He plays the Dennis Hopper villain. He plays the villain of the show, and he does these huge high falls and all this stuff. So he does 8 shows a day doing full stunts. So he was the assistant stunt coordinator on the film with Freddie and did all his own shit in the movie. So no, Nate's a badass. Nate's amazing, great actor. And and the funniest thing is he's the most soft-spoken, sweet man ever. Like, he's almost like shy. He's sort of like a shy kind of guy. So when I proposed this character, he's like, oh my God, this is going to be so much fun. It's so outside of who he is as a person.
Mm-hmm. So one of the things that I found very interesting about the movie is I saw this after watching Jason Goes to Hell and watching your interview, so I kind of got an idea of what your sensibilities were. Mm-hmm. This movie is it's very provocative. I think it is 2 things that I like about it. It is simultaneously very, very un-PC and progressive and inclusive at the same time.
Yep.
So did you, is this like Jason Goes to Hell? Were you setting out to try to push people's buttons and see what makes people tick or gets under people's skin a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing. The other thing is, look, when you're doing a movie as low budget as this movie was, you're not going to have the money for the kind of effects that I usually do. Mm-hmm. So the dialogue has to be the thing that's shocking. Mm-hmm. The dialogue suddenly becomes almost the violence of the movie. Mm-hmm. So I definitely was going for that to some degree. Here's the thing. If you walk out of this movie, every time we showed this film at 22 festivals, it was a big festival darling, right? And we won a bunch of festivals, which was amazing. When I would go to show the movie at a festival, I would say to the audience, I'd say, listen, if you are not offended at some point in this film, I did not do my job. Like, I want you to be offended, okay? Because here's the thing. I don't agree with one thing these characters do or say. Nothing. They are the worst people in the world. They're horrible. I mean, these are horrible people. My wife plays the most evil, insidious, racist bitch. She's just awesome. And she's amazing in the movie. Like, she's so brilliant, right? Mm-hmm. The idea was that I'm presenting a room full of people that you kind of want to see them all get their comeuppance. That's kind of the fun of the story. That being said, I again, and it is sort of the theme of my filmmaking at this point, I want my movies to reflect the world. Mm-hmm. I hate PC culture. I freaking hate it. I think it's destructive. I think it's actually quite racist. I can't stand anything about PC culture. I really can't. I can't stand it. I believe in being respectful of all people at all times. That's it. I believe in being a good person. I think racism is one of the most insidious diseases we've got in this country. Yeah. I think that homophobia is not far behind how awful racism is, and that it's just another form of racism. I think women should be equal on all things, all times to men, always. I think anyone does a job, you get paid what that job pays. I also think the best person for the job should get the job. I hate quotas because I think that's another subtle form of racism. I hate all things that divide us and make us hate each other. This movie, Secret Santa, is my fuck you to PC culture and to the people that are in fact not PC at all.
Yeah.
I love, look guys, I am one of those people that like, you know, I'm a super liberal guy. And I live in Los Angeles, so I live in a super liberal culture. Okay? Yeah. It gets me crazy when I hear people on my side of the fence talking about, well, they shouldn't be able to say that. Stop. Let them say it. Let them say it. Because here's the thing. I want to know where they are.
I get you.
I want to know what everybody's thinking. I want to know who I'm up against. I don't need to silence anybody. Let them dig their own stupid grave. So my filmmaking reflects the way that I live. And by the way, look, when we showed this film at Glasgow Fright Fest, it was one of the first big festivals we were at. We did Sitges and then we did Glasgow Fright Fest. And Fright Fest loved the movie so much. Alan Jones was such a huge fan of the film that it became the first movie that Fright Fest bought in England to present as one of their own movies. So they actually put the movie out on DVD and Blu-ray and digitally through Fright Fest's own label. We showed the film. The movie got incredible reviews, and it got the audience gave us a standing ovation. I mean, it was extraordinary. There was one tweet that came out of that screening, where the person who tweeted wrote like, "Really, Fright Fest, homophobia, xenophobia, racism, anti-Semitism," like did this whole list. It said, "This is the best Fright Fest can do." And Alan Jones, who is sort of the Roger Ebert of England, right? He comes to me and he says, "Adam, I believe this should be our poster." And I was like, "You're a genius." "Yes, it should. Yes, it should." I said, "Because I'm actually just as pissed at that dill hole as I am at the racists in my movie." Like, if somebody doesn't get what I'm doing, then your head is so far up your own ass.
That's exactly why this movie works for me, because, well, I think people kind of have a hard time making a distinction between a character that's meant to be despicable and the person behind it. And let's be honest, I'm like, in storytelling and a lot of forms of good storytelling, I mean, my experience, some of my favorite movies like Goodfellas or Pulp Fiction, or just normal movies, they're not about decent people. These are not people you ever want to be. They're awful people. But I think like film is a way to escape into another world. And what I like is that I never get the feeling that you harbor those beliefs. I get the feeling that you are just putting on a pedestal, knocking it off, and kind of like getting the audience like, yeah, that's what we want to see. We want to get rid of it. Because I'll tell you, when I saw it, some of the lines made my jaw drop because I didn't expect it to be so offensive. Yay! And I would be like a little taken aback, and then I'd start laughing, and then when the violence would kick in, I would squirm. So it was quite an emotional thrill ride for me. It made me feel things, but I never got the feeling that I actually think it comes from a progressive place.
That's totally where it comes
you
from.
could be from both on PC and progressive at the same time.
Yep.
One of the things that showed me that this was a great movie is that I showed it to my wife and son, and they had the exact same reaction to some of the dialogue as they did the kills.
Yeah.
So they were exactly the same amount of mortified.
Yeah.
I had one review that came out of England that said the movie gets far less violent when people start stabbing each other and they stop talking.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's the movie. Look, I will tell you, there's a great thing that happens in every screening that I've been in for the movie, and it really does. It's what makes it all worthwhile. There are two moments where the audience stops in the film. Like they're laughing, they stop. One of them is when Deborah has the line at the dinner table with her two daughters. And she's like, and look at what I have. One daughter who stops drinking and becomes meaner than a hornet, and the other daughter who stops eating and is still as fat as a house.
Oh, yeah.
And the audience goes silent.
Yeah.
They're laughing all the way to that and then stops.
Mm-hmm.
And I get chills. Just thinking about it. Because you suddenly see the bridge too far. You suddenly see the moment where it's like, oh, no, don't say that about your daughter. What? Okay. Mm-hmm. The other, by the way, and my favorite shot in that moment is there's a shot of Pat Destro, the woman who plays Aunt Carol.
Mm-hmm.
And she's laughing. She turns her head down and is laughing at that moment. She's the only one at the table who's like laughing about it. And if you'll notice, that moment is taken. I recreated the moment from the end of The Exorcist when Linda Blair is laughing when Father Merrin is dead on the floor.
Oh, and she has that little.
That's literally the same moment.
Okay.
The other thing is when Drew Lynch has his big secret revealed, and I won't say it for any of your viewers, but when he has his big secret reveal and he flips out and he does that screaming thing in the middle.
Oh, that's so good.
Thank you. Every audience around the world, every single audience gave the movie an applause break. The entire audience would erupt in applause. Now, here's the thing. I put that in this movie. Okay, that scene is in this movie. That's the scene that most says who I am as a person.
Mm-hmm.
That's the culmination of my politics is that scene.
Yeah.
This guy screaming to just be allowed to be who he is. And anyone who doesn't allow him, go fuck yourself. That's what I'm trying to say with Secret Santa. So, yes, it is an un-PC progressive movie. You nailed it. It's perfect.
Well, Drew Lynch was definitely a big standout in that. He's from America's Got Talent. That's where he got his big break.
Yep.
So you probably wrote the part for him, right?
Oh,
with the
hell
stutter
yeah.
and everything.
I worked with Drew for 10 years. Drew came to me when he was 17 years old. That's when I started working with him. He did not have the stutter then. He hadn't had the accident that gave him the stutter. So I've known Drew for a long, long time. And Drew didn't go to college. He ended up coming to me first. Like he was like, I don't want to go to school for acting. I want to come to you. No, I was there at every single one of Drew's stand-ups, at his open mic nights. I was there for America's Got Talent. I was there all the way through. And in fact, I directed Drew Lynch's first hour-long, it's actually a 72-minute long special, Did I Stutter, which is his first comedy special.
Oh.
Yeah.
So this was a pretty easy movie to get funded because people came to you. You didn't have any problem with I kind of answered my question, but I always thought you might have a little problem with distribution just because.
What, Secret Santa?
Yeah, because the content of it is so.
Here's what's great. Around the world, we had no problem distributing the movie. Like everywhere around the world, we had a number of offers in North America. The problem with distributors for tiny movies is that I had been on the road with the movie for about 2.5 years on the festival circuit. Mm-hmm. Every filmmaker I met who had sold their movie in the U.S. to any of these big companies, not one of them had made $1. None of them. None of them. And so Secret Santa in the U.S. is distributed by Skeleton Crew Distribution. We distribute it ourselves. And
awesome.
it's the only way. You have to carve out space in the marketplace for yourself. and figure out the viral marketing, figure out how you're going to get people to see the thing. But I got to tell you, man, there is a mechanism set in place to really hurt independent filmmakers at this point. And when it comes to streaming on Netflix or Hulu or any of these places, guys, it's very dangerous for filmmakers because there's no accounting structure. You just simply do not make any money. And that means you can't make more movies. So as far as the financing is concerned, the movie, guys, if I told you how much this movie was made for, you would fall out of your chairs.
How much?
30 grand.
Really?
What?
$30,000. That's what I made Secret Santa.
That's it?
With that huge cast? Wow.
$30,000.
Wow. That's actually pretty awesome. You've watched this movie with an audience. Were there any walkouts when you watched this with the audience, or did you see anybody get offended by any of it? And leave?
I've seen people get offended, but again, I've never had a walkout. I've never. That's not happened. So that I'm lucky that way. That I think people are too compelled. I think if you hate the movie, I think that it's more like a car crash. Like you can't take your eyes off of it, I guess.
Okay.
There's a lot of gasping that happens during the film. Like people gasp a lot. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But look, guys, I mean, I was able to pull this movie in for that kind of money because, again, I have a team. I have people that are, that become partners in a movie, and people who want to make art, like people who want to do stuff. It's a much less mercenary version of how to make a movie, and it's a team effort. And here's the thing: in success, everybody is in success. That's the difference.
Okay.
So everybody has skin in the game.
Yeah. So is there something on the horizon for Skeleton Crew Productions right now that you can talk about?
Yeah, a ton. I'm going to be heading out of the country the beginning of next year, hopefully, depending on what goes on with COVID in the next couple months. But I'm heading out of the country. I'm shooting a film called Dread that Deborah and I wrote, that I'm directing for Skeleton Crew. It is a much bigger budgeted film. I can't even say that. It's a budgeted movie. So it's a bigger movie about it's a thriller that plays a little more like a horror film. Have you guys ever seen Raid the Redemption?
Yes.
Yeah. So
Raid?
good.
Okay. So imagine 3 women stuck in a hotel that, unbeknownst to them, is part of a sex trafficking ring. And these women have to get out of this building alive.
Sounds pretty exciting.
And there's a lot of people who don't want them to get out.
And okay. And you wrote this with Deborah?
Deborah and I wrote it together. I'm directing it. Deb has a part in the film as well. And it is it's one of the most it came out of the Brian DePalma thing, which is this idea of like take a moment and stretch it like taffy. Like it's all about tension stretching. So the movie is it's got action in it, absolutely, but it's also terrifying. It's one of the scariest things I've ever written. So we're doing that one. I have another movie that I can't say the title of yet. We're shooting next year that I'm not directing, but that we've just brought on this marvelous young director, Kelsey Bolig, who I discovered at the Women in Horror Film Festival in Georgia last year, or the beginning of this year, excuse me. She is so remarkable, like an unbelievable talent. So there's a project that Deborah, myself, and a wonderful young writer named Lindsay Hollister wrote together. It is a camp horror movie. So I'm going back to my roots a little bit. Camp horror film that is for people of size what Get Out was for people of color.
Interesting.
Wow. Okay.
So it's a big fuck you to body dysmorphia, to sort of the last place that people can still make fun of people right to their face or have advice to give them about weight issues. It is, I don't know if I've ever been so proud of a movie as far as like the statement we're making and what we're doing for an audience that is most of the time just simply forgotten about. So it's, and it is a hardcore, there is a hardcore horror scene in this movie that when people read the script, they gasp out loud.
Oh,
Okay.
It let's put it this way, it makes Secret Santa look like we put, that movie has training wheels on it.
Really?
Yeah. Yes. It's insane. So we're doing that one. And then there's a television series that I finished writing that we were talking about earlier tonight. That is a thriller that I am so giddy about. I'm so excited about it. I wrote literally 700 pages in 5 months. It is for me the crowning achievement of my career thus far.
It'll be your magnum opus?
Yes. So
Okay.
that is the thing we're working on in the second half of the year. So those are the 3 big projects that are coming out of Skeleton Crew right now. And then there's a bunch of like little micro-budgeted films that we're doing because of the success of Secret Santa that's allowing us to kind of move forward with that idea, because Skeleton Crew is built into a 3-division company. There's our television division, there's our mid-range to larger range films, and then there's the area that I like to call I call it the where the fuck did Roger Corman go school of filmmaking, where literally it's like, hey, here's $30,000, go make your movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I made Secret Santa, was to prove that I would never ask a filmmaker to do something I wasn't willing to do. So that's how that happened. So yeah, I am. I'm doing a bunch of little micro-budgeted films. One thing that I'm directing, and then other things that other directors are doing.
Can you tell us a little about the Hearts of Darkness? That's your background. We were
Sure.
mentioning it earlier. That's a documentary about the making of Jason Goes to Hell.
It is.
So what's the status, and what do you plan to do with this documentary?
What happened was, for the last decade, I've had a lot of people ask me to make a doc about this. And I think in part because, the Crystal Lake Memories doc is terrific, but because it covers so many movies, even though the thing is like 5 hours long, there's literally only about 20 minutes per movie in that documentary. So they're almost like the little docs that you get at the back of a Blu-ray. And so people have been asking me, like, can you tell the story of this thing? So for years, people are trying to get me to do it. I didn't want to do it. I was like, I'm not revisiting my career. I'm too young. Jesus, I'm going to do retrospectives on myself.
Yeah.
So about a year and a half ago, a couple of fans of mine created the Jason Goes to Hell, the final fan page on Facebook. And they did it for my birthday. They were just being sweet. It was the sweetest thing. Within a few days, we had over 1,000 people on this thing. And suddenly all of them started clamoring for a documentary. Mm-hmm. So I said, okay, here's what I'll do. We'll set something up. We'll put it on Indiegogo. If the fans want to pay for it, I'll make it. I'll produce the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, howdy, do the fans pay for it. It's crazy. So suddenly we had a budget, and I brought on a marvelous director out of New York, a guy named Edwin Samuelson. I got a producing partner named Ali Rivera, who is the shit. She is just one of the most capable people that Skeleton Crew's ever worked with. And my producing partner, Brian Sexton, is executive producing the entire project. And then I got the best of all things. I got Peter Bracke, the guy who wrote the book, Crystal Lake Memories, who I laughingly call the Library of Alexandria of the Friday the 13th franchise, that if he were ever to burn down, we would lose all knowledge of the Friday the 13th franchise. He came in to be our historian and to do all the interviews. Mm-hmm. So it's a really cool documentary. I mean, like we started shooting this thing. We did 29 of our interviews, and then COVID happened. Mm-hmm. Oops. So we've got 6 more to do. Michelle Clooney just signed on. I literally just got her to sign on a couple days ago. But we've got 6 more interviews to do. And once those are done, we'll cut the movie. And hopefully I want to have it out next October. So we're trying to make that happen. We've had a couple of offers to have the film show at a couple of the festivals that I've been at, and two of the biggest ones in the world, in fact. And so I want to try to get it done for those festivals and premiere it there. So that's what's happening with Hearts of Darkness. Yeah. And by the way, the Indiegogo page went so well, we're still live. Like, they kept us on as an on-demand Indiegogo page. So people are still contributing to the movie, which is amazing because, you know, we have, like, when you donate to the thing, you get, you know, all kinds of cool shit as like a thank you. So it's a really cool project. It's something I resisted for a long time. And now that I'm doing it, like, I'm revisiting this whole thing and going like, wow, there's all these amazing people I worked with who I'm still close with, who have all these great stories to tell. And it's pretty cool. It's a pretty cool movie. That's
cool.
Great. Yeah.
There's one question I was dying to ask you.
Please.
James and I just made our first feature film that I wrote and directed. It's called Pay Up.
Awesome.
And we're listening to your advice as far as trying to stay away from the streaming services. We're trying to get a distributor, trying to go through festivals and stuff. But it was a $4,000 budget, and we did it in 4.5 days. So what I want to ask is, what advice would you give to a young filmmaker like James trying to break into the business? And what advice would you give to an older filmmaker like myself who's trying to make it into the business? And is it two different advices that you would give?
No, it's not two different advices. Here's the thing. What I can say about to filmmakers of any stripe, it doesn't matter what age you are. And again, if you watch Secret Santa, you know I'm patently against ageism, so much so that my cast ranges in all ages. When I was making movies at NYU, as I said earlier, I made 21 movies while I was there. Well, that meant every day for 3.5 years, I was shooting movies every day. Okay. The problem with most people now is they have technology. Guys, I literally have a movie studio in my pocket. We all do. I didn't have any of this shit when I was making movies. Like, are you kidding me? Like, I've got a 4K camera in this. I've got a mini version of a Red camera in my freaking phone. I've got a gimbal for this thing where I literally have Steadicam shots anytime I want them. There's an editing studio in this phone. There's a recording studio in this phone. That's insane. Here's the problem. People love talking about making movies. They just don't go make them. By the way, more in LA than anywhere else. This is the town where everything is about having a lunch about a movie instead of go make the fucking movie.
Yeah.
The trick is, and it's what I said earlier, Sean Cunningham's terrific advice to me. You are not competing with other indie movies. You're competing with all movies. So stop worrying about your budget. Worry about the story you're going to tell. If the story is compelling, people will go. Let's take, for example, one of my favorites, the movie Swingers. Right? Love that film. That film is so freaking ugly. It looks like it was shot through the bottom of a dirty shot glass.
It's like Clerks.
Like Clerks. Okay?
Yeah.
No one gives a shit. The acting is amazing. The writing is amazing. There's a sure hand directing the project. All of those careers started because of that tiny little indie. So it doesn't matter how much money you have. That's the big bunch of bullshit that people lay at your feet. And by the way, listen, I totally respect people who don't want to work unless they get paid. I get it. I totally respect that. The problem is, for some reason, everybody's willing to do theater for free, but not film. Huh?
That is weird.
By the way, if I'm getting paid in a movie, everybody needs to get paid. That's it. Everybody should get paid. If I'm willing to go all in as a director and a writer who's made my whole living being a writer and director, if I'm willing to do a movie for no money, then I'm going to look for people who are like-minded and want to do a movie where we're all rolling the dice together. Well, if you're a scrappy young filmmaker or a filmmaker who just hasn't made a lot of movies, that's the way you have to think. And by the way, the people who want to get paid, God bless you, that's terrific. You just won't work on this movie. We'll work on a different movie together. But it's finding like-minded people who say, I want to make some art. I want to tell a story. Let me go tell a fucking story. Your story is king. You come up with a great story, you're good to go. You get some actors that can act, that know their work, you're good to go. You don't need a lot of other stuff. Like I said earlier, I rolled up some foam, put a wig on it, slammed a door. You think I spent a lot of money on a fucking effect. It's a wig and a piece of foam. That's the point. It doesn't take a lot of money. It takes ingenuity. It's why The Evil Dead is such a great movie. They had no money.
Yeah.
They had nothing. They had a bunch of friends. I love when people talk about shaky cam. Shaky cam is a board. It's a board that they nailed the camera to and ran with the board. It cost them nothing. It was a piece of wood. This is the kind of thought process that real storytellers go through. And if you're a real storyteller, nothing gets in your way of telling your story. So that's my advice. And by the way, when it comes to getting out there to the world, festivals are 100% the way to go.
Okay.
100%. That's the way to get your movie to people.
Okay. But your advice is just to be careful with the type of distribution you get to make sure that you don't get screwed. Okay.
Hell yeah. By the way, listen, here's the other thing. On your first movie, you're going to get screwed. It's going to happen. You're going to get screwed. If you kind of accept, like, okay, I'm not going to make any money on this. I'm going to get screwed. But I can get people to see my movie. You're building a career. Everybody wants it to be about money first. It's never about money first. It's not. It's not. And if you wait for it to be about money, you will never make any. Because you won't build a career.
That makes sense. Sense.
I'm cool working for slave wages if I think that something has a foreseeable future. If something is going to mean something down the line to me. I made literally no money on Secret Santa while I was shooting the movie, while I was in post on that. I made no money. I wrote the film, directed the film, produced the film, and cut the film. I made no money. But you know what? It's one of the most rewarding experiences of my career. And I love the movie I made. And sometimes that's what it has to be about. Not always. Look, Texas Chainsaw, they paid me very well.
Okay.
Look, the scripts that I've written, oh my God, stupid money. But again, they're going to go make a $40 million movie. Yeah, you're going to pay me for the script. That's the way that works.
Wow. Perfect.
Great advice.
Well,
thanks, man.
I think we are asked everything. There's one question I have to ask. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about, and I wanted to save it until we got the other stuff I wanted to talk about first.
Sure.
You did that movie, this is circling back, Conspiracy with Val Kilmer. What was it like working with Val Kilmer? I just have to ask that because I've heard stories about him, both from like Joel Schumacher or different filmmakers or
John Frankenheimer is another one who had great quotes about Val. Working with Val Kilmer was the single worst experience of my lifetime, not just in film, of my lifetime. And I had a brain tumor in my 30s. Easier than working with Val Kilmer.
Those stories are true. Because Joel Schumacher said he was psychotic, and I don't know if you've heard of the Island of Dr. Moreau. There's a documentary about the making of it.
Yes.
And he sounds like a complete nightmare. So
Nightmare doesn't come close to what he is. He's one of the most cruel human beings I've ever experienced. He is a narcissist on a Trumpian level. He's a bad, bad, bad man. He's so bad that when I asked Kevin Spacey about him, Kevin Spacey went, "Oh, that asshole."
Oh man.
He is a terrible, terrible person. Terrible person. Yeah.
All right.
I will give you only one story, and then because I'm writing a book about my time with Val.
Really? Oh, it's that.
Oh yeah.
All right.
On day 6 of shooting with him on Conspiracy, I was setting up a shot on set. He had shown up to set. He was drunk and high. He was 4 hours late on that day, which, by the way, was great because it was better than 6 hours late, which was half my schedule. He showed up late. He was drunk, and he was wearing the first pair of Crocs sold in Santa Fe, New Mexico. He's very excited about his Crocs. And he wanted to show me his plastic pool shoes. And I said, Val, hang on one sec, dude. And I'm setting up the shot, and suddenly he kicks me in the balls with his shoe.
What?
With his Croc. And I hit the ground. The medics have to come in, the whole bit. And he's giggling. He thought it was hilarious. Now, I hadn't said anything or done anything to Val. I didn't give him my attention when he wanted it, so he kicked me in the balls, so that way he had my attention.
Wow.
That is a true story. That is Val Kilmer.
Okay. So
A nightmare.
what
Yes.
we've heard is all true then. I just had to confirm it. Okay.
True times 10. My favorite, there are two quotes from John Frankenheimer, the legendary filmmaker of Manchurian Candidate and much more. Who, by the way, my partner Brian, my producing partner, Brian was John Frankenheimer's personal assistant at the beginning of his career, so it was kind of amazing. John Frankenheimer said about Val Kilmer 2 things. One, there are 2 things I will never do. I will never climb Mount Kilimanjaro, and I will never work again with Val Kilmer. The second quote was, I'm going to totally screw up the quote.
Paraphrase.
It's the Western performer who had the quote about "I never met a man I didn't like." Guys, I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
It was like a Roy Rogers, that kind of thing, who said, "I never met a man I didn't like," and John Frankenheimer said, "Yeah, you never met Val Kilmer."
Okay. Well, so you're gonna write a book about him.
Oh yeah, about my experience. It's not about him, but
obviously
about the shooting of Conspiracy. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that has some juicy stories in it.
Oh, you won't believe.
Okay.
You won't believe. I shot with him for 24 days. It almost made me leave the film industry. It's the only time in my entire career that I actually considered leaving.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Do you know what the book's going to be called?
I know the subtitle, the undertitle is How Val Kilmer Stole My Movie.
Okay.
But I have too many kind of wonderful titles, and I haven't decided yet.
Okay. That's fair enough. Well, I definitely look forward to reading that and checking that out too then.
Yeah. It might simply be called Kicked in the Nuts, but
okay.
How Val Kilmer Stole My Movie. So yeah. It's he's a terrible. He just published his memoirs, and I leafed through it at my local Barnes and Noble because I was like, I'm never going to pay to see this book. So I leafed through it, and I was just, my jaw dropped at how self-aggrandizing the book is, and what a victim he is. He is a pathetic piece of crap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cannot wait to read that book. I cannot wait to read to see the 3 movies you're coming out with. You seem to have tapped into what my exact tastes are. You're one of those.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome, guys. I love that. That's great. Thanks, man.
Sure.
So Adam, I want to thank you so much for giving your time. You were such a gracious person, and amazing stories that you shared with us. This is everything I was hoping it was going to be. I hope we lived up to your expectations as far.
You guys were amazing. Just
All right.
terrific, and the questions were great.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
You got it, guys. Awesome.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Great talking with you.
So we hope you enjoyed that in-depth interview with Adam Marcus. I sure had a great time going into that. Lots of information in there. lots of things that I wanted to learn about both Jason Goes to Hell and Secret Santa and a couple of those other films. It was great. I loved it.
It's interviews like this that remind me why I love this podcast.
Yeah.
That we get to experience things like that. It's such a great interview, such great insight into his process and the filmmaking process in general and his whole story. It's so cool and so compelling.
Yeah. Well, till next week, folks. Happy horror.
Happy horror.